The closed session report, and we've already had the pledge. Please, roll call if you want.
Mayor Wood?
Here.
Councilmember Sanchez? Councilmember Kern?
Here.
Councilmember Feline?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Feller's absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council meeting closed session to discuss the following items. Item 1, labor negotiations, unrepresented employees. Item 2, litigation, Hurst versus Garcia et al. Item 2B, conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation in the matter of one case. Item 3, real property negotiation. 3A, Center City Golf Course. Item 3B, El Corazon Park property. Under negotiation are price and terms for the use of the property for City Center, and under negotiations for Sudbury, price and terms for the disposition of the real property.
Adjourn to closed session. Thank you. Whoever you want in first. Welcome to this evening. Madam Clerk, for the 4 o'clock roll call, please.
Mayor Wood?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Here.
Councilmember Sanchez? Here. Councilmember Kern?
Here.
Councilmember Feline?
Here. We get the time consent calendar, please.
Okay, the next items are the consent calendar items, which include items 4 through 12.
Any public polling?
No.
Move approval. Second. Thank you. Please vote on it. Thank you. I know you're coming. Hang on a second, please. Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. No comments. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Item 13.
Approval of a budget appropriation in the amount of $20,000 from the unallocated general fund reserve to the city manager's office budget for the city council approved goal setting and budget prioritization process.
Honorable Mayor, council members, Michelle Lawrence, City Manager's Office. At your June 27th council meeting, you directed staff to issue an RFP for facilitation services to help you with your council goal setting and budget prioritization process. So we did that. We issued the RFP, and at your direction, we selected a consultant. And I'm back tonight to request your approval of a budget appropriation in the amount of $20,000 to fund the effort. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Michelle. Have a seat sidebar. And Madam Clerk, do we have public on this?
We have no public on this.
Thank you. Back to the council. Comments, if any, or a motion? Move approval. Second. Motion said, Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to vote against this, and the reason that I'm going to vote against this is because I believe it's a waste of taxpayer funds. We really don't need someone else to moderate a discussion amongst us. We should be able to do that. $20,000 is $20,000. It probably would have meant the difference between keeping the Santa Ray Resource Center open or closed. So I'm going to vote against this. Thanks.
Thank you. I see no other lights, but I'll have to agree. I don't want to support this. I think the city manager and us can discuss issues on budget issues. So let's go to the vote, please. Thank you.
Councilmember Kern, I need your vote.
Motion didn't vote.
Motion approved, 3-2. Wood and Sanchez, no.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate item 14. You get a chance.
14 is consideration of a purchase order in an amount not to exceed $783,180 to Marco Equipment Company of Pomona for refurbishment of 4 Timco street sweepers for the Public Works Department, and authorization for the Financial Services Director or designee to execute the purchase order, or, in the alternative, approval of a 5-year professional services agreement with Tandem Pacific in the average annual amount of $719,042.80 for citywide street sweeping services and as-needed emergency work as a result of accidents, storms, etc., and approval of a one-year property use agreement for staging, fueling, parking, unloading of sweeping debris and washing equipment on city-owned property at 4927 Oceanside Boulevard, and authorization for the city manager to execute the agreements and give direction to staff.
Thank you very much. Please go right ahead.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm Kyle Koger, Public Works Division Manager. The item before you tonight is asking the City Council to either approve a purchase order for the refurbishments of 4 street sweepers or to approve a professional service agreement to outsource these services. At the May 16th meeting, staff recommended outsourcing this program and awarding a 5-year professional services agreement to Cannon Pacific of San Marcos. The council decided not to outsource the program at that time and to continue to provide the service with city staff. At the August 15th meeting, staff recommended approval of a purchase order to Marco Equipment Company of Pomona for the refurbishment of 4 street sweepers due to their overall poor condition and in order to meet diesel engine emission standards. Refurbishment of the sweepers was previously delayed to see the results of the outsourcing RFP process. The council did not make a decision on the purchase order at that time and continued the item till this evening. If the street sweeping program is to continue to be provided by city staff, the 4 street sweepers need to be refurbished. The current replacement cost for a street sweeper is $226,000. The cost to refurbish a sweeper is $196,000 for a per unit savings of $30,000. City staff recommended to refurbish the sweepers since insufficient replacement funds had been collected over the lifespan of the vehicles. The sweepers were originally put on a 10-year lifespan, but only lasted 8 years due to a harsh environment of salt air, constant moisture, and long hours of operation. The chassis on the sweepers are still in good shape, so refurbishment was the best option. The refurbishment costs were not obtained through a competitive bid process, but were sole sourced. All existing street sweepers utilize Timco equipment, and Marco is the only distributor of Timco equipment in the Southern California area. Each year, Fleet collects money from users to pay for the eventual replacement of the vehicles. The future replacement cost of a vehicle is calculated by taking the current acquisition cost of the vehicle and adding an annual 4% inflation rate. The future replacement cost is then divided evenly over the lifespan of the vehicle. These replacement costs and refurbishment costs were included in the cost comparison between city staff and contractor for outsourced consideration. Staff is asking City Council to either approve a purchase order for refurbishment of 4 street sweepers or to approve a PSA to outsource these services. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk,
We have 4 speakers on this item.
thank you very much.
Will Holder, Nadine Scott, Chester Mordesini, and Jimmy Knott.
I guess I'll go first. Chester Mordesini, Teamsters Local 911, Bellflower, California. We represent the OCEA bargaining unit, of which these employees that would be outsourced are bargaining unit employees. Folks, this is the reason that you have public employees. You have a challenge what to do about the street sweepers. Kyle went back to his guys, a supervisor in Fleet. They came up with a new approach to dealing with, instead of buying new street sweepers, you refurbish the old ones, you get more longevity, you keep the employees in place, and you continue your flexibility. If you continue to contract employees out, what you're going to find is someday you're going to have a catastrophic event here in the city, even if it's not catastrophic, ongoing storm issues and stuff. You'll have no employees to deal with restoring the services to your community. This is a time in a political environment where outsourcing seems to be the panacea right now. Everybody wants to do outsourcing. This issue has been discussed in the past. The reason that we have public employees is because you need to have services for the community. If you contract out your in-house employees, you will be dealing with contractors, and when you need those employees to establish services back to the community, you will not have them. You will be dealing with contractors. When the economy comes back around, and the highest, you will have contractors, you will be paying contractors at the highest bid. The excuse in the past has been public employees are too expensive, the retirement costs are too expensive, We've negotiated pension reform. The governor has implemented and signed AB 340, which is further pension reform. So you can't use the excuse that it's too costly for the pensions for public employees. That train has left the station. Do yourselves a favor for today, for the current employees, and for the future. Keep your in-house employees whole, keep them in place, keep them making the good judgments on how to find savings. The savings that you'll save by contracting the sweepers out is minimal and de minimis compared to the costs that our guys came up with at $30,000 a copy to refurbish the sweepers and increase the life of those sweepers. So I'm asking you to vote to refurbish the sweepers and keep the current employees in place, and do not do the alternative and outsource the street sweepers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nadine Scott. I agree with him, pretty much, everything he said. My concern with going out of the city is a couple-fold. There's a fuel adjustment in the contract, and we all know how gas prices are being manipulated by the big oil companies. That could take up any savings in the very first year. There's also only 80 hours for emergency and special event sweeps in their cost savings. I think that's a really unrealistic number. They're also replacing 4 street sweepers with 5 that we have now, so it's not going to be the same amount of good service we're getting. And I'm really concerned that the contractor would only have to do an accident report within 72 hours, even though there would be severe, serious injuries. What kind of contractor is that, man? You call your city immediately upon serious injury and you report it and you start documenting it immediately, not 72 hours later, particularly because they want to be on city property, that they're basically getting for a giveaway huge amount of city property for $2,000 a month. That's a joke. You know, you're trying to pump up revenue. That's not how you do it. Last, they're discussing a repair facility for their equipment. There's anywhere in the materials I read, it might be in there, I might have missed it. Doesn't tell you where that's going to happen. Also, I'd like to put your attention to the existing schedules. Right now, they're street sweeping at 4 a.m. adjacent to residential areas. I think that's egregious. We have so much noise in our city now. I'll be talking about it later during the circulation element. Circulation element's going to raise the noise element, the noise level above what is acceptable under our own noise ordinance. And we need to be more cognizant of what we're doing in the city relative to noise. So based on all those factors, the fact that this is not a cost savings, you're going to lose 4 people paying against pension costs and obligations. You can't outsource everybody. You're going to have a tsunami payment obligation, because when the pension expert came, he was extraordinarily clear that if you continue to outsource, you're no longer going to be able to meet your pension obligation. So let's just stick with what we have and let the employees make the savings and keep going with city employees. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Will Holder. I am one of the current sweepers for the City Oceanside, on which is on the agenda tonight. I would say it was about at least a year ago when, as a department, we were told that we were going to be up for coming to council for outsourcing. That year came in May. And in May, City Council, you decided 3-2 not to outsource this at the time for this current fiscal year. So that was under the impression we were under, but come to find out, not the case. We're here 3 months later. And what I would say is that I don't really see a new contract or anything. I'm not really understanding why we're here. But what I do think is that it's probably going to set a bad precedent to other contractors who are not happy with what City Council decides, that, they do whatever they have to do to stir the council into getting their matter brought up every 3 months, because if that's the case, you could be here every 3 months, and that seems time-consuming and tiresome. Right now, the city employs 4 sweepers. All 4 of us live in the City Oceanside, own homes. 3 of the 4 of us are second, some of us third generation Oceanside residents. And with that being said, when we go into a neighborhood, we go in because we either have relatives, friends of relatives, or friends of friends. So when we go into that neighborhood, we do the best job possible because A, we don't want to embarrass ourselves personally, and B, we don't want to make the city look bad. You know, and to me, it's kind of like, you know, a pride of ownership. You know, when you work and you live in the city that you were born and raised, and that's how I feel about it. And I would say it was about 2 years ago, I was on the tree crew that, you know, city council decided to outsource. And at that time, you know, the city was in, you know, a financial, whatever we want to call it, and I kind of, you know, I understood it was a general fund and it was probably a necessary evil. You know, that's the way it went. But with the street sweeping program, I feel as an enterprise fund, we generate our own revenue, we pay our own fuel, we maintain our own vehicles with the money that we generate. And to me, it should be more about quality and not quantity. And I know we've all heard it before, you know, whether it be our fathers, our mothers, or anybody in our family, everybody always knows cheaper is not always better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, council members, streaming out 127 Sherry Lane.
I think it's time for us to explore a new option into outsourcing. And the new option is restructuring this service into a self-supporting enterprise option, basically, with the fees and fines going into the enterprise. This could be established very simply with the self-supporting entities of the enterprise expanding their options, as an example, to the mobile home parks and multifamily communities, which they currently are not serving. They could take and contract to them to take and do services to those communities as an enterprise fund. They could then take and then have to balance their own operations with bringing in revenues and also with the fines and supporting their operations. Make it a challenge to them to say very simply, if you want this, you basically take and operate it. And then whatever takes and comes in, you take, and the cost and the differentials, you take and will carry this. This is an option that you do have in addition to outsourcing. It's establishing an enterprise fund and making this an enterprise operation.
We have two late speakers,
Please.
Sheila Cada and Bill Brunsa.
I'm Sheila Cada, 5301 Village Drive, Oceanside, and I'm going to tell you my life has been turned upside down because of outsourcing, because our government in 2006 gave big corporations our taxpayers' money to move manufacturing overseas, and that destroys us. I want to fight for people to keep their jobs. People need to have good paying jobs. When you outsource, you know what that does? It's cheaper, and guess what? People work and they get a minimum wage. I want my taxes to go and support people and give them good paying jobs, build the middle class. Don't give the 1% everything. When you privatize, it ends up costing you more money. They don't do that good of a job. These people are our friends, our neighbors, our brothers, and I want to support our street sweepers, our public employees. I want more public employees. I want good paying jobs. I want to pay our teachers more. I want to pay our firefighters more, and we can do it, and that's the American way. We need to support our good paying jobs, increase the middle class, and this thing, if you guys, you have to think of their lives. It destroys lives when you outsource and you make people earn wages, very little wages. I'm very emotional about this because how it has affected my life. And I am totally against outsourcing. We need to stop it. We need elected officials that work for the people of Oceanside and say, hell no to outsourcing. We're going to save jobs. We're going to save your families. We're going to keep you Oceanside employed with good jobs. That's what we need.
Hello. I'm not emotional about this. At my age, it doesn't make much difference, but I'd like to leave Oceanside at least as good as it has been and hopefully will continue to be for my children and grandchildren. Number one, I don't think we have too big a problem with our employees, but I do think we have a major problem with the city management. I'm not talking about you folks necessarily, but the managements of some of the departments. If they were doing their job, we wouldn't be here even talking about this, my opinion. One of the things that's been discussed is the repairing some street sweeping equipment. I got on the internet and checked what other cities are doing, and everyone, including San Diego, is doing it with their own people. But Oceanside plods along and does it twice a month. Everybody else is doing it once a month. And why can't we do it? That would save at least half, and then you wouldn't have to repair those 4 vehicles. But this is what our managers should be looking for. Another thing is we got this, I'll call him parking enforcement guy tagging along. It's almost a useless job, but we could have him look at people's front yards as he drives along and indicate those that have code violations, such as weeds that are waist high and a lot of that in Oceanside. But, and I think it would give the man a lot of more pride too if we gave him a duty like that. And I'll just give another indication of where I think we have a management problem. I understand we have a lawsuit against Oceanside for about $1.5 million. And everybody seems to think, oh, big deal. But when it comes to a little guy that's got to work for a living, we're going to cut his job out and give it to a contractor who may or may not be hiring illegals. And how are we going to check on that? But getting back to this $1.5 million, which is no big deal for a lot of you, if our management was watching it, we would have been prompt and handled that sewer spill and done it. If things didn't go properly, they would push it and make it happen. When I worked for a living, that was what a manager was for, to make things happen. And I think maybe this council here has got the power to goose the management, at least have them be accountable, and if not, get somebody that is capable. Anyway, that's my thoughts, and again, I'm not emotional. I'm just pissed off. Thank you.
We have one more late request. Terry Johnson.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Terry Johnson, 169 Mayfair Street, Oceanside, California. And I'm not going to get emotional, but I am very concerned about what I'm hearing. And I sympathize with each and every one of you sitting up there having to make the hard decision. When you look out in the audience, you see hardworking, dedicated employees. And I understand during these tough times, when the resources are not there as they have been in the past, what you have to do. But what concerns me is, when I left office 8 years ago, and you guys have heard this speech already, because we were going through the debate process now, running for office again, some of us. I left the city, and there was roughly $34 million in the budget reserves. And I asked myself, what has happened to that money? It took us a number of years to raise that money, to store it away for a rainy day. And I do understand that when I left office, there was roughly about 900 employees working for the city of Oceanside. And then it went up to maybe about 1,100. And I understand now that it's down to around 7 or 750. But still, I ask the question, what happened to all that money? Now, it appears to me there may have been some mismanagement, some misallocation of the funds, maybe spiking of salaries, maybe spiking of pensions, who knows. But I would like to throw this out to you, and it's nothing new. You've heard me say this before. Before you do any more outsourcing, before you lay off any more employees, I would seriously like each and every one of the elected officials, the mayor, the deputy mayor, and 3 council people, to seriously consider that in these serious times of financial constraints, think about a luxury that we cannot no longer afford right now, maybe later in the future. Each one of you have an aide, Collectively, you're spending about $400,000 a year, salaries and benefits. Eliminate the aides, get one secretary for all of you. If you have to, just get one for the mayor and one for the 4 council people. But you can have some cost savings right there. And I'm not saying do it on a permanent basis. When times get better, maybe hire them back. But having 5 legislative aides is a luxury this city can no longer afford. And we're the only city in the county outside the city of San Diego that has an aide for each and every one of the elected officials, except for the treasurer. So, having said that, please consider something like that before you lay off any more employees. Thank you very much.
That's all the speakers.
Mr. City Manager, you want to tell us where that money went?
Honorable Mayor, council members, you still do have your $14.5 million Healthy Cities reserves. You do have, and I don't know what the totals are, there's some money left in your Economic Stabilization Reserve and Infrastructure Reserve that was, part of that was refunded when the state came in a number of years ago and took like $9 million from us. But I believe part of that also went to buying your new senior center, portion to the new fire station, and we'd have to look, but most of that money actually went to capital improvements, where you consciously decided to actually spend that money on something that would actually benefit the community. But we'd have to do some research to determine the entire amount.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me. With that, I think I'll come back to the council member. Sorry, I was looking up a note here. I'll start off with council member Fillion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all may recall, this item was pulled at my request because I was not sure that the amortization of when we got the council item to buy the street sweepers, I wasn't sure whether or not the purchase price or, the annual cost of the sweepers was factored into the cost difference in the outsourcing bid, and so I asked for time to meet with the staff, and after meeting with the staff, it is all factored in there, so from my standpoint that is not an issue. But I do have a later item on the agenda dealing with recognizing the true unfunded liabilities and unrecognized stock market losses and comparing apples to apples to get the full pension costs for outsourcing or private sector partnerships and to save money. And at this cost, looking at our costs here of $319,000, that additional cost is, approximately 30% of the base wages, and the amount of money we're paying to CalPERS is an additional 30%. So the pension costs for the city is approximately, 60 cents on the dollar. And of course, as you know, I have railed against what I believe is a dishonest use of 7.5% as a discount, say an inaccurate use of 7.5% as a discount rate. And if we used a more realistic rate that would be used in the private sector or long-term bonds, you would see the unfunded liability increase by about 250%. So there's huge costs that are out there that are not being recognized, and not adjusting for the discount rate, but just allowing for the 30% amount in unfunded liabilities on this contract. That would be roughly, we're dealing with rough numbers, $50,000 here. Now, that, I guess since this item was put off and it was voted on in the past, I guess the issue is whether or not the majority on the council to move ahead, since my specific issue has been resolved that I pulled it for, or if there's an interest to look at based on my item and getting a policy from the city later, whether or not we want to look at that in view of factoring in the unfunded liability. So I will wait to hear from my colleagues.
Thank you. Councilmember Sanchez, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to go ahead and make the motion that we approve the purchase order in the amount of not to exceed $783,000 $1,180 to Marco Equipment Company of Pomona for refurbishing of 4 Timeco street sweepers for the Pacific Works Department, and authorization for the Financial Services Director or designee to execute the purchase order. And
I'll second that.
okay, thank you. There is, as has been explained during the presentation by staff, the sweepers have collected sufficient funds to be refurbished. It would be paid out of the fleet replacement fund. This is one area that does not make sense to outsource. Street sweeping in Oceanside is very critical. We are under, we have requirements having to do with the Clean Water Act that we have to comply with. These are laws that are in place. We want to have a clean city. I have heard some residents ask about, why we don't do 1 versus 2 a month. These are things that I would prefer to have the manager look at. I would prefer to have 2. I mean, I live on a street that gets dirty, and I wouldn't want to have that reduction in many of our neighborhoods. So I do believe that the service that we get from our street sweeping program is a great service. It is a service that we can't do without. It doesn't make sense, again, to outsource. We get pretty much, right now, we get kind of personal service, and we heard from one of the employees. This is about pride in Oceanside. This is about being very proud of the work that is being done and our ambassadors to our city. So I'm going to, I believe that this is something that we have to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Feller, please.
Thank you. Will, I hope you take care of the whole city just like you do your friends. First thing I'd like to ask Mr. Weiss is what are the outsourcing that we do? What is the outsourcing that we do now?
Honorable Mayor, council members, we have a number of programs that we do outsource. In fact, earlier this evening you approved contracts, a number of contracts in the Utilities Department, which is using consultants to not hire additional city employees, included the maintenance services and janitorial services in the harbor. In Public Works, I know we do tree trimming, all of the parks mowing. Kyle may have the rest of them, but we've outsourced all of the accounting functions in finance. And I'll have Kyle address the other ones in Public Works. But we as far as dollars are concerned, there's a fair amount of money that is now spent on outsourced services.
Like City Manager said, we do all of our landscape maintenance, which includes the parks, medians, LMADs, that's outsourced, tree trimming, concrete repair, storm drain cleaning, pressure washing, machine and meter maintenance, any type of mowing, especially the river mowing, and underground utility marking services. And there's probably a few smaller as well.
You missed a couple. Okay, so this question is for, let's see. Well, it came from Terry to Peter. It's a memo. Terry's sitting here somewhere. Terry Farrell. Maybe you could come down here for a second, please. This was dated September 6th, street sweeping 5-year forecast.
There was a request from Councilman Kern to put together a 5-year forecast just for the street sweeping budget. And we were using the parameters that was used in the overall city forecast from January 2012. Now, within the business unit for that budget, there's actually three components. You have the street sweeping portion, which is what's up for discussion right now. There's the city parking enforcement, which is not proposed to be outsourced. And then there are fixed costs that whether you outsource or you keep in-house, the city's going to have to pay those costs regardless. So we put together the parameters, and those numbers pretty much within a few $1,000s mirror what I believe Kyle has in his staff report. There are some fixed costs that I wanted to bring to your attention, things like debt service on the building. Regardless of how many people you have in the building or you have no people, you still have to pay debt service. The pension obligation bond, there is a bond that's issued, and whether you have one employee or 1,000 employees, you still have to pay that, so that's a fixed cost. I do have some information that sort of ties in with Mr. Feline's request as far as unfunded pension obligations, and that's another area that's not addressed in here, but I'm available to answer those
Well,
questions when
I'd
they
like
come
to
up.
know the number that is the debt for the pension per employee in that regard. Do you have do you have something along that line?
I don't have the number off the top of my head.
We talked about this morning, Peter. Do you?
Honorable Mayor, council members, there are certain assumptions that would need to be made, and I think we have some additional information later. But a portion of the unfunded liability is included in our PERS rates. They actually give us that number, and that's included in our overall costs in those rates. We do have the ability, if you look at regardless how many employees we have, if you eliminate employees, we will still have a burden to PERS that needs to get paid for those existing employees and employees that are eligible to retire. So that dollar amount will continue, which is again part of our PERS rates. Mr. Feline raises an issue in regards to the 7.5% discount rate that they use, and whether you agree with that or not. Again, PERS gives us a bill, we have to pay it, and I think they made a whopping 1% or so return last year based on additional returns. So philosophically, the issue of is there adequate funding for the unfunded liability, we are making our payments to PERS based on what they're telling us to pay, not whether or not it's what you may think is the right thing to pay.
Okay. Well, in our backup here, so I'm going to use this memo in our backup. In one place it says city staff costs and contractor costs, $795,609. Is that right? And the contractor costs after the 5th year is $762,166. There is no CPI on city costs. We don't do that.
I believe the city costs that Terry came up with were about 0.5% a year. I don't.
Okay. So I'm looking at city street sweeping costs, personnel, maintenance, and operations. The top of that paper that you gave us, that memo, and it says at the end of 5 years we're at 716,000. Is that right?
That's correct. One thing that this chart doesn't show is we have a charge from Waste Management of $125,000 every year. So you have to add that into this chart to get a true equal comparison between city staff and the contractor.
Okay, so we need to add 125.
Yes, sir. You need to add $125,000. The reason it wasn't put in these charts is because it's paid for out of another program. Okay. But we did identify it in the backup material you have in the staff report, so you could see the true difference.
Okay. I think what I've come to here is at the end of 5 years we are not saving significant dollars, because certainly if these employees are outsourced and it bumps down to the smallest of the employees, that the newest hire, I guess, is probably how it shakes out. And what I would really like to do at this point is change the tone. We, as the leaders of this city, the policymakers, we do not, we haven't, other than council members, I'm making about 25% less than I did when I came on the council 12 years ago. But I do support the process of evaluating city services and outsourcing those services that can be provided at a lower cost and still maintain the satisfaction level we expect. It's one of several ways we have to balance our budget. Before I can support outsourcing any more city services, I recommend looking at another area to save and consolidate services. This was a hard decision for me to look at, but I believe that we need to start looking right outside our office doors. Now, I don't know how Mr. Johnson heard what I was thinking, but having individual council aides for the mayor and council members is an expense that is not needed and one we cannot afford. The salary and benefit package for 5 council aides comes close to $390,000 a year, maybe a little more. One person hired by the city manager to handle phone calls, typing letters, gathering information, scheduling, making proclamations, and other duties would be sufficient. All departments should be looked at equally in this process, and that includes ours. I believe we should lead by example and eliminate the 5 council aides. I feel as strongly about this as others do about outsourcing. I propose that we postpone tonight's vote to outsource street sweeping, and I ask for support to place on the next agenda the elimination of our 5 aides and replacing them with one hired by the city manager. By supporting my proposal, we will be leading by example and demonstrating that we as a council are willing to be part of the solution to the problem. And we absolutely have a luxury of having people like Vicki Prosser that are upstairs working for us, working on our behalf for the citizens. But it is time for us to consider the elimination of the legislative aides. And so, I'm pretty much at the point where if we can do this, then I would support the other outsourcing as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not sure if I want to try to connect two. We're talking about an issue tonight. You have 2 choices here. Throw in a third option at this particular time. This is things that should come up at budget hearings and what we're going to do.
Mayor, I'm just asking to postpone.
I know you are, and I'm just saying this at last minute, you're asking to postpone. With that, I'm surprised, but with that, Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. You look as perplexed as I feel. So, let's stay on topic for tonight. If Councilmember Feller wants to bring back that at a later date, I think he can put it back as a council member item, and we can discuss that. So, everybody knows where I stand on this. The idea that we brought it before, and I'm not going to support Councilmember Sanchez's motion because that's $783,000 check we don't have to write. And the idea, and I know there's some numbers floating around and whatever, but I'm looking at the staff report where this saves us $118,000, $434 the first year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the idea that, to me, that's a significant savings. You know, when we talk about hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's a significant amount of money to me, and I'm sure it is to the people at home. When we talk about this particular service that the city provides, and that's what we are, we're a service delivery system. That's what the city does, is deliver services. And after the last meeting, I called around and talked to other cities to find out what they did with their street sweeping. Carlsbad has outsourced their street sweeping for 20 years. And I would think Carlsbad's a clean city. It strikes me as being done well. I've never heard any complaints about Carlsbad's streets being dirty or not services being done. Escondido, I think, is for at least 10 years, I know they've been outsourcing or contracting out their street sweeping service. And it seems like it's worked well. In fact, I think the gentleman that was here last time, in San Diego, there's 18 cities. There's only 3 that keep that service in-house. So the majority of cities, a vast majority of cities, actually go out and hire private contractors to do this. So if we can take that $118,000 and save that and put it towards parks or put it towards other street maintenance issues, that's $118,000 that we can actually deliver services to the people with. So that is my concern. You know, the long-term goal of us, all of up here, is the long-term fiscal viability of this city. The trend has been to go for public-private partnerships in all areas. I think the city manager mentioned a few of them. I think we have the ambulance billing service coming up in October. Those type of repetitive things where private industry has actually economies of scale to actually provide the same service at a cheaper cost. So that's what we're trying to do, is maintain that level of service while reducing our costs, just like any other business, public or private, needs to do. So that's why I'm really supportive of this idea of going out to the private sector and asking them to help us provide services to the citizens of Oceanside. When we talk about the PERS, and that's the big mess, and I think Chester was talking about, you know, the PERS changes and things like that. Remember, as long as we keep the employees on PERS, our unfunded liability keeps rising. At a certain point in time, you know, that's the problem, is that we go forward, that portion of the liability keeps going up. At a certain point in time, the whole system's going to collapse unless we can get out ahead of it. Now, Carlsbad got out ahead of it 20 years from now, or 20 years ago. Escondido, 10 years ago at least. And the 15 other cities in the county of San Diego have done the same thing. So I don't see us as any different from any of those other cities, that they actually go out to the private sector to get help in providing services. So that's why I can't support writing a check for $783,000. And I'm going to, if this motion fails, I'm going to support the idea that we contract out for this service to provide service to our constituents at a lower cost. Thank you.
Councilmember Philan, please.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make sure, I mean, we're voting on the actual purchase of the equipment, and if the majority of the council wants to keep the services in-house, then it certainly is going to make sense to purchase the equipment. But I'm going to vote no on this motion because I want to look back, well, I mean, to me, when this originally came up, I was certainly satisfied with it saving $118,000. I mean, why should, you know, there's a first year, and, you know, why should we turn down any savings? And, you know, the whole thing that's driving this is pensions. When you have private sector pensions, taxpayers who are out there listening to this, and their average expense is about 12.5%, and we have our pensions as city staff, and our pension expense is 60% to the dollar, then, you know, that's what's driving it. You know, it has nothing to do with not being satisfied with the work that city employees are doing or the staff. It's just that, you know, due to the politics of stuff, they've created a environment where their cost structure is unsustainable. And cities all over the state are now beginning to go bankrupt one by one by one. I can certainly recite the list. We all know it. And the only option that we're going to have, you know, as I've said many times before, you either spend the same money and get less service, or you raise taxes and pay more money for the same service, or you outsource and you spend less money and get more service. And certainly the most successful outsourcing we've done as the city is to get rid of our in-house trash services and contract it to an outside company. I don't believe anyone's been unsatisfied with that transition. So the goal of the city is to provide services. It's not to be a jobs bank. It's to be a service provider. And I guess, you know, one thing that kind of irks me is to hear this idea that only public employees do good jobs, that in the private sector, you will never get good jobs. I'm sure all the taxpayers listening to these speeches on TV are really impressed that private sector employees don't do good work, so I, kind of am offended when I hear these kind of speeches. The issue is, when everyone goes out to shop and they shop for a car, they benefit from competition. When they shop for clothes, they benefit from competition. When they shop for food, they benefit from competition. Well, taxpayers should get to shop around too. We should benefit from competition. And I'm, more than happy to set up, basically make sure that, people need to be competitive, and that includes the government service. So, I would certainly hope that there's support to save the taxpayers any amount of money. And to me, $118,000 is a good start. I think when we properly factor in the unfunded liabilities that currently aren't factored into the outsourcing bid, that amount, like I said, goes up to an additional $50,000 per year, roughly. And that's worth saving. And, everyone has to make tough choices to get through the financial crisis we're in. And, this is one small step in the right direction. If we can go back, reassess our position, and outsource this service rather than, as Councilman Kern says, spend another $700,000 to keep it in-house. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller, please.
Mr. Weiss, if this was approved, well, let me put it this way. If the contract with the outside source was approved, where does that $700,000 go, 783?
That money would be surplus money that would be reimbursed back to the solid waste fund.
And is it possible to move forward, refurbish the sweepers, and use them relatively as a collateral in if you did ultimately get to outsourcing street sweepers, could they or would they consider taking those off our hands?
That I don't know. That'd be a conversation we would need to have with that contractor.
Probably not, but I think that we're really we need to be leading by example here, and so I'm going to support the motion. I just I don't believe that we are taking ourselves seriously. I just heard a great lecture on having employees and $300,000 savings if we just hired one for all of us is probably the actual best thing that we could do to if in fact we are interested in outsourcing completely. Thank you.
Please vote.
Motion approved, 3-2. Kern and Feline, no.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, at your convenience, please, item 15, please.
Discussion of a draft update of the city's housing element for the fifth housing element cycle and adoption of a resolution authorizing staff to submit the draft update to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for initial certification review.
Good afternoon, how you doing?
Mayor Wood, council members, good evening. Russ Cunningham, senior planner. I recognize that we're very close to the 5 o'clock hour, and I can forego my prepared presentation if you're inclined. I cannot access my PowerPoint presentation here. There wasn't much to the PowerPoint presentation, but my prepared remarks I can forego, let you know that we're here seeking the council's authorization to submit to California Housing and Community Development a draft update to the city's housing element for what is the 5th housing element cycle for the San Diego region, and certainly field your questions and comments on the draft that's been available for some time now, vetted by our planning and housing commissions and public workshops, and made available to the public for approximately 2 months now.
Thank you very much. Have a seat at sidebar, and we'll get going. We usually break at 5 o'clock to get some things done, but we'll go from here. Councilmember Sanchez, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, this is as the staff report indicates, this is in concurrent with the adoption of the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, the RTP, and Sustainable Communities Strategy. So basically, what we have before us is what has been approved by SANDAG's Board of Directors, and that is our Regional Housing Needs Assessment Plan. Our assignment for the City of Oceanside with respect to a regional fair share allocation of 6,210 new dwelling units for the state prescribed 11-year projection period. And so for that, that's for 2010 to 2020. For very low, it's 1,549 units. For low, 1,178 units. For moderate, 1,090. Above moderate, 2,393, for a total of 6,210. That's our obligation, and our obligation includes demonstrating that we have adequate land resources to accommodate the development. We do have the Mission Cove that we need to look at, and we need to move. We have the opportunity from the sales from original home funds to make it happen. So I'm hoping that having this before us this evening reminds us of our obligation, reminds us that this is a requirement by the state so that we can continue to get our funds for everything else, road, etc. I'm going to move approval. Thanks.
I'll second that, and with that, Madam Clerk, speakers, please. You have two.
Two speakers are Kay Parker and Nadine Scott.
Kay.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I wanted particularly to comment staff. I've seen a few housing elements in my day, and this one is very professional, and I particularly want to compliment Russ. A lot of work went into this, and it's a fine job. You can be very proud of this document that's going forward. We have to submit it to the state. It's required, not desired, but required. And it's a very interesting document. It's a snapshot of our city, identifies our needs, and identifies how we will meet them. And there was a lot of active community outreach, and the Housing Commission voted unanimously to approve this, and we hope we get a 5-0 vote to submit this to the state. It will come back, they always do. It's part of the recycling that comes out of Sacramento. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nadine Scott. I agree with Ms. Parker. It is a really professionally prepared report this time. It's awesome. It has a lot of great data. I was really pleased with it. I was also very pleased to see that mobile homes are recognized as a critical component of the affordable housing. That should be a message for all of you who supported Prop E. Without the mobile home component, we're never going to meet our goals. Two little critiques. The environmental constraints were not adequately covered. You could enhance that section a little because you did not seem to take into account habitat replacement and where that would occur. So when you have limited acreage, I think you're going to have to seriously think about where those are going to be because you can't build on everything. For instance, you have development along Loma Alta Creek. There's some habitat there that would have, there's a lot of places that would have to be replaced. Also, I want to make sure when we're talking about smart growth, it's not stupid growth. We want high-quality designs. I know you're working on some of that other material, Russ, so that's really important. I think if you read through the report and the underutilized sites inventory, there are a lot of commercial properties listed, and I believe it's the policy of the city not to convert commercial to residential, so I think that has to be a consideration as you're preparing the plan. I know you probably already looked at that, but it doesn't show. And last, in particular, for my Loma Alta neighborhood, we have a massive overconcentration of affordable housing. That does come out in the report. You can see it clearly. We have over 50% of the affordable housing is in that neighborhood. And I realize we have that great property by the Sprinter, but I think we have to think really carefully when we develop that to make it good projects and not the apartments and the really blight, ugly things we're seeing over on Apple Street and Greenbrier and that area. So other than that, it was an excellent report. Thank staff and everyone who prepared it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to the council. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you. Russ, this is just a question for, how much does each unit cost, for instance, at the Cove? For, the 288 units?
Deputy Mayor Feller, I would defer to David Manley, our Housing Division Manager, on that question. I believe David's here.
He's hiding, but yes, he's here.
Thanks, Russ. Councilmember Feller, are you referring to the city subsidy that's going to be required, or
no? What does it cost to build?
Total development cost is about 81 million at this point. 288 divided into that. You're going to be under around 300,000, but that includes the long-term affordability of everything out 55 years, not just your market rate turnkey on that.
That's more than the house I live in, and that's really all I have about that. I think that affordable is probably about 50% of the entire city, based on those standards. I support this. The vacant property is owned by somebody on Crouch. And so has that been discussed with that property owner? Or
Deputy Mayor, are you referring to properties listed in the housing sites inventory?
Yes, the vicinity of the Crouch Street Spinner Station.
Right. No, we haven't contacted any property owners regarding inclusion in the inventory, because the inventory is simply establishing that these are properties that have the potential to accommodate housing at a certain density.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Real quick, please introduce.
Yes, thank you. Mayor, we've had great support from John Douglas, J.H. Douglas and Associates, very experienced housing element consultant, and so much of the credit given here at the dais goes to Mr. Douglas.
Mr. Douglas, thank you and welcome. I wanted to make sure everybody said hi. I think this is an important issue, as we know from the Sandag and the state what we require in our affordable housing. Sometimes is a number that we can't believe, but we're stuck with that. And so with that, please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take about a 10-minute break to set up for our next part of this. Please, if you haven't been in before, up the stairs, bathrooms, and
we got three. Let's kick off. I hadn't seen it. But we might as well, we can get started and you're gonna do your, wait, where are they? We can get, you can do your presentation. Yeah. It's bizarre with that.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're waiting for the other council members to get started. I called it because it's getting a little bit after 5. I thank you for being here. We had a long meeting earlier and some good items and good contacts and good exchange of information. Hopefully that will get out on the KOCT later. And then earlier when we have this stuff, there's presentations. I appreciate your patience, but some of these are important. And for you, I'd like to tell you, if you got a cell phone or a pager, put it on silent or vibrate. We'd appreciate that. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting. And with that, we're going to start off with the invocation and the pledge. And Valerie, could you get that announcement, please?
Yes, if you would all stand at this time for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. And this evening, leading us in the invocation, Reverend Malaki Teo'iliili, Oceanside Samoan Congregational Church of Mesa Margarita.
Let us pray. Our God, the supreme creator of the heavens and the earth, we lift up this day our mayor of this great city of Oceanside. We lift up our councilmen and councilwomen of this city to thy strong help. Grant them the peace and strength not to grow weary, as they must remind us that we are one people, one city. Uphold them that they may encourage us to be increasingly able to reason together, to seek an essential consensus with one another, to live in a wonderful diversity and a stable unity within this city. Uphold our mayor, O God, as he leads us onward to that desirable society of persons who seek real worth, so that we may be able to become a society in which none shall live in fear, but rather we become a society that promotes justice, promotes mercy, and promotes unification amongst its people. Lastly, O Lord, living here within this city, the home of Camp Pendleton, we live and we ask and we lift up to thee our armed forces, our troops and their families, whether stationed abroad or here at home. Assist them. Let them know that you are their God and they are your people, and that you will stand by them through all of life's trials and tribulations and difficulties that they may encounter. We pray these things along with the silent prayers of the citizens of this city and everyone gathered here today, in the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
We would call the following individuals forward for the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. Wanda Prosser and Chris Keys, who are members of the Santa Margarita DAR chapter, and Wendell Keys, a member of the San Diego chapter SAR.
Hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may all be seated at this time. Everyone is here for the proclamation in honor of Constitution Week. Whereas September 17th, 2012 marks the 225th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jim Wood, Mayor of the City of Oceanside, do hereby proclaim September 17th through the 23rd of 2012 as Constitution Week, and urge our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained.
Well, at my age, I write down stuff instead of trying to remember it. Mayor Wood, council members, and citizens of this great country. My name is Wanda Prosser. I'm the regent of Oceanside, Santa Margarita Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution. We were chartered in Oceanside in 1929 as the Oceanside Chapter, but as the area grew, we changed the name to Santa Margarita to reflect the region that we live in. Last Monday, September 17th, was the 225th anniversary of the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America. In the petition, we've already talked about the Public Law 915, but that came about because the Daughters of the American Revolution petitioned Congress to designate September 17th to 23rd as Constitution Week. And Constitution Hall in the city of Washington, D.C. is the only structure in the United States of America that was built to honor the U.S. Constitution. And so we're very proud of that. And I'm here tonight as a member of the DAR to ask you to celebrate with all of us this wonderful document that we live by. Thank you.
I want to confirm I was not there in 1929. I know I look like it, but it's not true. Who's spreading that rumor? Come on up. Get a good photo here of this group. Thank you. Let's hear it from them, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
For our next presentation, we have Pet of the Month. And tonight with Elke Wills from the San Diego Humane Society North Campus. She has volunteers Pam and Dee, and very special guest, Simba, with them.
Big cat. Bigger than you.
I don't think this might be the first time we've ever brought a cat. We've brought plenty of kittens, but usually cats are stressed out in this type of situation. But we have found that Simba is probably the most laid-back, cool cat you'll see or meet. He's been on television. He walks on a harness or on his leash here, and you'll see him walking around the Humane Society there on Airport Road to get some exercise. Because if you'll see him, he's quite large and he needs to lose a few. He's 12 years old and he has diabetes. We really don't lead him, he leads us. But he's a wonderful cat that would make it a great addition to any family. He just is such an easy guy, going guy. For those of you who understand diabetes, sometimes it's wonderful for them to go into families. He needs 2 insulin shots a day. His adoption fee is actually $25, or you can go in and say what you're willing to donate to adopt him. And again, he's at Airport Road, and he has his mind set to doing things, but we've seen him. So he's just a wonderful, great cat. If you know anybody who's looking for a cat that doesn't mind other cats, and I have a feeling he probably wouldn't mind a dog as long as they didn't mind him. We have a few exciting new developments happening. We have started a new licensing, well, I wouldn't say new program, but we're going to be out mobile throughout Oceanside and Vista starting this Saturday, and where we're going to be doing licensing out in the community and also affordable discounted microchipping. And starting in October, we'll be doing vaccinations as well. So our calendar is going to be up on our website, but this Saturday we're going to be at Dog Days of California on Peacock Boulevard from 10 to 12, and it will be the fourth Saturday of every month after that. And we're booked all the way into July of next year. So that's a great way for us to get out into the community and get our animals licensed. So important. Some of the new features for licensing, we've got a fast track, which means if they're found, they'll be quickly reunited to the owner or they'll be taken to a veterinarian. We have a free ride home for the first time a pet is picked up instead of being charged the fee. Also extended stay, if they're found while you're on vacation and or just period and they're on, we'll hold them for 14 days instead of our 5 days until they're put up for adoption. And also a vacation pet alert. So if you go on vacation, you can call us and let us know who's responsible for your animal and make sure we have all that information in our database. So we just want to get animals home safe and healthy, and we think that this is a great way to do it. And then starting November 1st, we're going to be relaunching our spay and neuter voucher program, which means affordable opportunities for people to get their animals spayed and neutered, which is what we all want to happen and we all want to see happen, less animals coming into the shelter. So I appreciate your time, and don't forget the dog park. We have a less active and very active, and it's open from 7 to 7.
That has got to be the most mellow cat I have ever seen. And he's a little heavy, not that I'm pointing any fingers. I mean, he's a little heavy, but he would be a great mascot for like the Lasino Indians. Hi, Mel. Get a picture here with a good-looking part. Hey. Thank you, ladies, and thank you for coming. I can't believe that one hasn't been taken.
That concludes our presentations for the evening.
Madam Clerk, we're going to go forward with the closed session report from our city attorney, please.
Thank you. The council met in closed session to discuss item 1, conference with labor negotiator, only involving the unrepresented employees. There's no action to report. Item 2, conference with legal counsel on existing litigation involving the matter Hurst versus Garcia. No action to report. Item 2B, significant exposure to litigation. Council did discuss one matter, nothing to report. Finally, item 3, conference with real estate negotiator involving the Center City Golf Course property and the El Cor Zone property. The council did discuss both items, but there's no action to report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, 22, when you get the chance.
Okay, item 22 are communications from the public. For items not on the agenda, we have 5 speakers. You may come up to both podiums. Please line up. You have 3 minutes. Fred Murray, followed by Sheila Cada, Nadine Scott, Mel Vernon, and Susan Craddy.
Good evening, sir. Well, good evening, everybody. How are you?
Good evening. My name is Fred Murray. I live at 2409 Dunstan in Oceanside. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, fellow citizens. I'm here to promote an event that will be taking place on Thursday, October 18th. It's Speak Out Oceanside. It's a public non-profit forum for citizens of Oceanside to come and express their views about what's going on in the city. I think it's particularly appropriate that we have an election coming up. We view this as a place where, at a time for citizens to come and praise the city for those things that are going well, to maybe bring up those things that are not going well that can be improved. So I want to encourage everybody, all residents, all the folks that are here tonight, please come and attend this one. It's held on Thursday, October 18th at the library, and that's a shout out to the good public servants who provided that to us at a very reduced, or at a very reasonable price. We have a website, and there is a blog you can look at. So once again, thank you very much for allowing me to promote this event. It's essentially a town hall meeting for the citizens of Oceanside to come and express their views about the events going on in Oceanside. With that, I'll pass my time along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm Sheila Cada, 5301 Village Drive, Oceanside, California. I want to talk about wasting money and what I think our elected officials should do. First of all, our elected officials, I think the one thing, especially in this economy, is to protect jobs, is not lay off anybody. And I don't think it's a good idea to lay off the aids for these people. You know, there's many different ideas to come along. You can take reduction of pay for everybody across the board, and people that are making over like $100,000 or over, like if they're making over $200,000, 20% cuts, over 110% cuts, and have it a scale, you know, like if you're making a very small amount, maybe 1 or 2% pay cut, but to save jobs. And I'm tired of the waste of money. Like Mr. Kern, we had a very good tax. He called it a crash tax, which it wasn't. It went after insurance companies. If a car would have or something had a spill on our freeways or in our city, then we would go after the insurance companies to pay for that. Now, I understand that's probably a few $100,000 a year is coming out of our general fund because we got rid of that because Mr. Kern said that the reason that it gave a bad name for Oceanside. Well, I worked down at the Sunset Market, and I asked hundreds of people, did they care about that? They said, no, we'll come anyway, charge it to our insurance company. Then Kern and Felling and Feller, they got another, I remember there was something that cost over $70,000 for a third study on something that they, in 4 years, which we have people in our community that were willing to do the study for free. That's a waste of money. Then they got rid of this thing which they brought back, and it was for, you know, the firemen to go in and go into big apartment complexes and make sure that they were okay, and they got rid of that for a short period of time. That has come back, and now we're charging these big apartment complexes, you know, their owners, you know, those things. There's just so much waste of money with that Felling, Kern, and Feller have put on to the citizens, and Mayor Woods and Esther Sanchez are always fighting for us, and we need to save the jobs for the people, and we don't need to get rid of any jobs. We need to have innovative council members that think of ways to save people's jobs, because it affects families when you lay people off, and you need to know that, and to create jobs, not get rid of jobs.
Sounds like a good idea. Nadine Scott again. I just want to talk to the public more than you folks, because most of you don't listen anyway, but some of you do. The vote by mail ballots will be out in approximately 10 days. Seriously, 10 days. As we all know, Oceanside's a huge vote by mail city. Oftentimes, the initial count at 8:01 p.m. from the voter registrar The issues are decided and the candidates are decided by 8:01 due to the mail-in ballots. So make sure you're registered, make sure you return them. If you don't know about all the issues and the candidates, I'll talk about a few of them. Esther Sanchez is running for council again. She's done a wonderful job for our community and our neighborhoods. Her phone number is 760-978-3555. They have voter registration forms, they have information on all the candidates. If you'd like to help her out, that'd be great. Jim Wood, our wonderful mayor, and newcomer Dana Corso, the president of Action, who's protected our neighborhoods, also have an office in Oceanside, and they could use your help and visit them and help talk about issues. Their number is 760-231-8756. And I really encourage all the voters out there to inform themselves. There was a community forum last night with all the candidates there, and there's a distinct difference between folks who don't believe we have climate change, folks who believe in outsourcing everything. That is not Esther, Jim, and Dana. They're going to fight for your neighborhood. So I'm giving them my vote, and I hope everybody out there will consider it. Thank you.
Hello, Mel Verdon, 1044 North Ivy, Escondido. I don't live in Oceanside, but I spent a lot of time here. And this has to do with, in spite of the fact that we're having all these elections going on, and in spite of the fact of all the different perspectives being brought forth, I was reading an article, I think, in the newspaper. It has something to do with the senior center at El Corazon, but they still don't have a kitchen that I'm aware of. So it seems to me like all this energy that's being pushed, and brought into some of these debates and whatnot, there's still things that people are having to deal with everyday circumstances. And one of those seems that the senior center might get pushed back because something else is taking the limelight. So being a part of a community and doing a lot of volunteering that I see that can happen, I think if the community can come together on some of these issues that benefit the community and the seniors that we have here in a nonpartisan way, even to the effect of our the veterans, these issues are something that's going all the time, no matter who's in the driver's seat. So I'd like to see something happening, and by myself being a part of it, I know musically I can contribute, and there's people that I know that can come together to at least maybe do a fundraiser for some of these issues that could help relieve some of the day-to-day problems that are going on in some small way. But at least it's a positive step and something that we can do. And I like the idea about the town hall gathering. Thank you.
By the way, Mel, I've heard you and your band, and they're outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. And you're forgiven about that cat mascot thing.
Yeah, okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Susan Craddy. I currently live in Carlsbad, although I lived in Oceanside from 1965 to 1986. Not to date myself, but I was brought here when I was 1 year old. When I moved to Carlsbad, I moved south, taking many memories with me of Oceanside, both positive and negative, and some very, very painful negative memories. I'm a graduate of Oceanside High School. Now I have a fantastic opportunity to be on a planning team for the Oceanside People's Town Hall, and I'm here to kind of bookend on Fred's comments and encourage all of you to attend. You can be assured that it's a planning team that is very genuine. It's a team of activists, local activists. It's not a marketing scheme or a pyramid scheme that we're inviting everybody to. It's a genuine team that hopes everybody participates. So I encourage city leaders, community leaders, and organizers, as well as all citizens, to attend the People's Town Hall on October 18th. It's a fantastic model for all activists to replicate in other cities. And I'm sure it will be a successful, nonpartisan coming together of a very caring community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's all the speakers.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, could we go to public hearing items number 23, please?
Adoption of a resolution implementing automatic annual increases in the city's thoroughfare fee program for residential development according to Transnet requirements.
Thank you. As a mayor, I open this public hearing, and first I will say disclosures. Council members, please.
Staff only.
Staff and public. Staff, public, Sandag.
Staff.
Staff and public.
Madam Clerk, correspondence, petitions?
No correspondence.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll have feedback from our home. Gary, good evening. How are you, sir? You're looking pretty sharp.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. This proposal is allows for a pass-through increase in our existing thoroughfare fee program. And I'll bring up the slide. The increase originates from the original ballot proposition from the 2004 Transnet extension. The act, in addition to the half-cent sales tax, included a provision that all cities exact from the development community at least $2,000 per dwelling unit from 2004 to 2010, and then since 2010 there have been 3 cost of living increases. The funds are retained by the city and used exclusively by the city for city streets, and it only affects residential housing, excludes low, moderate income housing, and excludes nursing homes. And at the bottom, here's a comparison of the existing fee program, which is based on vehicle trips versus the pass-through increase. For single-family homes, there would be no increase because the amount we collect based on trip generations is higher than the Sandag minimum. For condos and apartment buildings, there would be an increase, and the new amount is $2,165 per apartment unit per condo unit. And adoption of the measure would allow for us to pass through any regular increase that Sandag determines is appropriate from the Transnet program. That's the presentation. If there's any questions, I'll be available.
Gary, have a seat at the sidebar, and I'll go to the city manager.
Mayor and council members, I would like to indicate that in the absence of us collecting the appropriate amount of fees, we are at risk of losing significant Transnet funding.
Yes, we are. Thank you. With that, public.
This is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak, please come forward to both podiums. You have 3 minutes. For those who turned in requests to speak forms, I will not be calling your names. Just come forward.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. Since I live in a mobile home park and it wasn't mentioned up there, will mobile home parks be applicable into the new fees? Thank you.
Later, Gary, when we finish. George.
Great. Honorable Mayor and council members, I'm Mike Bullock, 1800 Bayberry Drive in Oceanside, a retired satellite systems engineer and the transportation chair for the local Sierra Club. On a personal note, I'm a recent Bicycle Traffic Skills 101 graduate. I usually bicycle, and I've done 6 Labor Day pier swims, winning my age division for the last 2 years. This is a great place to live. The Sierra Club, under the circumstances, supports development fees. However, there is a problem. The Sierra Club believes that free market principles should be applied to reduce congestion. Specifically, when it comes to driving, no one should be forced to pay for something disregarding how much they use it. Use it more, pay more. Use it less, pay less. You may be shocked to know that some people can't afford to own a car, and some people make it a point to drive as little as possible. Now, the use fees, and I noticed he was saying per trip, understand that's an average. That's an average. The use fees drive up the cost of home ownership and rents. However, this increased cost is irrespective of how much an individual drives. Fortunately, this could be fixed. The cost of the road building could be unbundled from the cost of the homes and unbundled from the rent. And I would be happy to explain the method of unbundling. Currently, California spends $4 billion a year on road maintenance, As bicyclists, I would like well-maintained roads, and we should actually be spending more. However, the point to be made here is that the state only gets $2 billion a year from all gas taxes. The other money comes from general taxes, such as sales tax, property tax, income tax. This can all be fixed by a comprehensive road use fee that returns money to people to eliminate the inequity. The road use fee must be equitable and environmentally sound. When it comes to equity and the application of free market principles to cure congestion, consult with the Sierra Club. The current system is unsustainable. No one likes congestion, and no one likes potholes. Progress on this will require a strong desire to solve problems and strong leadership, especially at Sandag. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mike.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a couple questions. I understand the need for this activity, this action tonight. We want that money. I might have missed it when Gary said why we're not changing the single-family amount, because that just puts the burden on all the rest of the taxpayers to make up the difference if there's no increase. And I was also curious, the Nexus study indicated these fees do not even come close to covering the actual cost. For those of you who are so concerned about always covering the actual cost, this is like a tenth. I realize you can't burden your residents with it, but in the end, you're burdening existing taxpayers with the difference. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item?
Madam Clerk, I see none. I'll close the public hearing, come back to the council. Before I do, Gary, there were some comments there. You want to address any of those, please?
The first comment about the mobile home parks, as a practical matter, this would have no effect on mobile home parks because it's hard to imagine a developer building new mobile home parks, which would be owing an impact fee, and it's even harder to imagine a mobile home park, a future park that is not low mod housing, which is specifically exempted. For Nadine's very last point, these are minimums. Council can determine any fee that's appropriate that's higher than the minimum.
And like the city manager indicated, if we don't do this, we lose Sandag monies. Correct. Thank you very much. With that, back to the council. Councilmember Kern, please.
Thank you. Gary, one quick question. The apartment fee, that's almost almost $600 increase. Why is there no change in single family, but then a $600 increase for apartment?
Yes, in the staff report, there's a expanded table that shows our existing method of thoroughfare fee determination is based on vehicle trips. Sandag planners determined that there's an average of 10 vehicle trips generated from each single-family residence, 6 per condo, 4 per apartment. Under our existing fee structure, we charge $255 for each one of those vehicle trips. So on the old column, that is the fee per single-family house, condo, or apartment units based strictly on trips and nothing else. Unfortunately, in the thoroughfare fee, in the Transnet ordinance, they took a different approach, just a flat per dwelling unit approach, which made the fee disproportionately larger for condos and apartments. They did allow a 5-year phase-in period where this fee comes into effect in 2010, gave the development community 5 years for fees generally to catch up with that level. And so here we are after 2 further years of 2% increases at a per dwelling unit fee of $2,165.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to do that. This is something that needs to be done. This is basically a pass-through from Sandag on the Transnet, tied to the Transnet. I'm going to move adoption of a resolution approving the pass-through collection of the Regional Transportation Congestion Improvement Plan fee under the Thoroughfare Impact Fee Program.
Second.
You tried. There's a motion second. Thank you very much. Councilmember Sanchez, please. No, well, let's go ahead and vote, please.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, when you have the opportunity, item 25, please.
25?
Oh, where was that? I'm sorry. 24, I'm sorry.
Okay. Adoption of a resolution certifying the final program environmental impact report for the circulation element updated modified 1995 circulation element alternative with a mitigation monitoring and reporting program and a statement of overriding considerations. Adoption of a resolution approving a general plan amendment for an update to the circulation element of the general plan, and approval of amendment number 4 in the amount of $23,259 to the professional services agreement with IBI Group for the circulation element update, to develop CEQA findings, the mitigation, monitoring, and reporting program, and to revise the draft circulation element document for the modified 1995 circulation element alternative, and authorization for the city manager to execute the amendment.
Could you go over that again, please?
No.
Mayor, I'll open this public hearing, please, and request disclosure. Start with you again, Jack.
Public and staff.
Public and staff.
Same.
Lots of public and staff.
Actually, this is a continuation of a previous public hearing, so we've heard from everybody multiple times. So public, staff, BIA, ABC, you name it.
So
everybody in the alphabet we've heard from.
Well, we probably won't be speaking much on this
Yeah,
item because
yeah.
we've already heard it. That's good, and I'm glad to hear that. Anyhow, Madam Clerk, correspondence, disclosures?
We received one email from Marion Cavadias, which council also received.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. John, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Honorable. Fine, thank you.
Good
I'm
to
the
see
City
you.
Council, John Anderson, Development Services Department. I'm pleased to bring back to you tonight the general plan amendment for the circulation element, as well as the certification of the programmatic environmental impact report. I'd just like to quickly, this isn't showing up on the, I'm sorry. CPU. Just a quick review. We initially brought the circulation element update to the Planning Commission on May 21st. The staff recommendation was to adopt Alternative 1. The Planning Commission, however, forwarded a recommendation to adopt Alternative 2. We then brought the circulation element update to Council on June 6th. The item was continued. We came back on June 20th and received direction from Council to develop the CEQA findings and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the modified 1995 alternative. Again, here the staff recommendation was for Alternative 1. There's some key discussion points about the modified 95 circulation element alternative. It is essentially the identical roadway network for 2030 that's in the current circulation element, with a few exceptions. One would be the assumption that Old Ranch Road would not be connected between Gohomey Lake and Melrose Drive. It also includes Melrose Drive extension south to be 4 lanes and not 6 lanes. We went ahead and revised the circulation update to account for the modified 95 alternative with the CEQA findings and mitigation monitoring and reporting program. A local coastal plan amendment wasn't required. Now, we had brought that forward initially to the Planning Commission Council and realized that that wasn't necessary in this case, so we pulled that. We made sure to include the Mission Avenue one-way couplet as well, because this was adopted by Council several months ago, and we wanted to make sure that we carried that forward as part of this amendment as well. That resulted actually in one less significant roadway impact on Coast Highway when we included it with the modified 95 alternative. And lastly, it's important to note that all of the updated policies and programs are also carried forward with this alternative. And that concludes staff's presentation.
John, thank you very much. We've gone through this before, so I know. But take a seat at the sidebar with the rest of staff. And when you get over, could you introduce everybody, please, first? Could you introduce the rest of the people here?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have Trish Butler with BRG, she's our environmental lead, and then we also have Tueri Faola with IBI Group, she's our traffic lead.
And the other good-looking gentleman up front?
He's some guy picked up off the street, but no, they didn't go with a traffic engineer, my boss.
Where's security when you need it, huh? Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. Madam Clerk?
This is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to come forward to speak on this item, you may line up at both podiums. You have 3 minutes. Again, those who turned in forms to speak, I will not call your names, just come forward.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Shore Lane. Again, I rise to say that this is inextricably linked to the circulation element, to the land element, and that it should be only considered when both come forward at the same time. Because it's like going to the altar alone with a spouse and no bride. And this is one of those cases where it doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all just to have one of them come forward. Because when you take and you have one, it's going to affect the other, and you're taking it out of context. And it just makes no sense at all. If you read it page by page, it affects one and the other. And I cannot understand why you're just doing something a little bit bass-backwards instead of saying it the other way around.
Honorable Mayor, council members, and city staff, I'm Howard LaGrange, and I co-chair the Oceanside Bike and Pike Committee. I'm speaking on behalf of the committee this evening. And when the circulation plan element came up to council approximately a month ago, the election was not to incorporate the Coastal Highway Vision Plan, and with the idea that that could be incorporated later on. And what the committee would like you to do is to direct staff at this point to at least evaluate the transportation elements of that plan, specifically the vehicular plan, the pedestrian and the bicycle plan of the Coast Highway Vision Plan. I'd like to remind the council that almost every other coastal community at this point has developed a Coast Highway Vision Plan. Del Mar has done a super job on their plan. It's gone to council. It's going to go with the voters. It takes the 4-lane road down to 2 lanes with bike lanes on each side. It takes out the stoplights, puts in the roundabouts, puts the bulb outs in, increases the width of the sidewalk. Solid Beach Coast Highway Vision Plan is being actually constructed now. Very similar plan. Whole idea is to create an environment that's pedestrian and bicycle friendly. The idea is to have people come to that area, people gravitate towards areas that are aesthetically pleasing. And Coast Highway along close to a lot of areas is just a high-speed thoroughfare. Encinitas, as you know, approved the plan through Lacadia about 2 years ago. They're looking for funding for it. But what they've done is they've taken down the 4-lane road to 3 lanes, incorporated bike lanes, bulb outs, and roundabouts also. All of these have a similar type of objective, and that's really to make the area more pleasing to visit, and that's the idea of increasing the business in those areas. Again, I urge you at least to have the staff evaluate the idea whether or not it's possible to take Coast Highway from 4 to 2 lanes. Take a look at the level of service, considering that it would be a multi-mode level of service with pedestrian and bicycles at this point. Now is the time to start this project. We're going to be last, even though our Coast Highway Vision Plan was probably preceded all these other plans. And I hate to see Oceanside lag behind in this area again. I love Oceanside. I think it has a lot of opportunity to increase the business in the downtown area. Some of the council members went up to Long Beach and looked at an area that was more bike and pedestrian friendly, and it's done a super deal for the businesses down there, increase business, slow down traffic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The Honorable Mayor and council members, I'm Mike Bullock. I am the Transportation Chair for the local chapter of the Sierra Club. The circulation element and its final environmental impact report are unacceptable. The circulation element does not support climate stabilization, and destabilization is not explained. CEQA requires that negative impacts be explained. Feasible mitigations must be considered. My emails of today and of June 12, 2011 include examples of mitigations that would eliminate congestion. And the majority rule of this council believes that adding lanes will cure congestion. However, the Los Angeles experience proves otherwise. Implementing the highway lobby's business plan is not leadership. The requests contained within the above-mentioned emails include the following. 1. Oppose the widening of I-5 and State Route 78. The resulting I-5 at State Route 78 interchange would be larger than the interchange in Sorrento Valley and destroy the livability of South Coastal Oceanside. The proposed 12-lane I-5 will put traffic noise all the way down to our beaches, harming tourism and neighborhood livability. 2. Delete the Melrose extension and the Rancho del Oro interchange. The city should not cram projects down the throats of unwilling citizens and neighborhoods. This is big government at its worst. Include the Coast Highway vision with its road diet and traffic circles, as Howard was talking about. The region's RTP and this circulation element should support climate stabilization. Any earth science textbook states that atmospheric CO2 traps heat, and we are adding great quantities of CO2 to the atmosphere. It's that simple. Time is running out. Elections matter. The Sierra Club endorses Mayor Wood, Councilmember Sanchez, and candidate Dana Corso, who has done an outstanding job in the debates. At last night's debate, I was also impressed with Jimmy Knott, Donald Snyder, and especially David Zernick. And I hope these three candidates, for the good of our city, will eventually graciously bow out and endorse Ms. Corso. Here's a quote from Councilman Feller, quote, "References to global warming are ridiculous. If anything, it's global cooling." We really cannot afford to have council members that can't tell the difference between facts that are in textbooks and propaganda. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, Chris Wilson, 770 Harbor Cliff Way. I agree with Jimmy Knott on this, that I really think in adopting the circulation element before there's a land use plan in place is putting the cart before the horse. Land use drives traffic. Any common sense should tell you that. Anybody who's ever taken a class in urban transportation planning should be able to tell you that. You don't decide to put water mains in before you decide where the houses are going to go. You don't decide to put roads in before you decide where people are going to live and where they're going to need to get to. And that's what this is doing. The other issue that I have with this is that this keeps things on the circulation element that there aren't the votes on the council right now to actually move forward with. Specifically the Melrose extension, which would require taking a property by eminent domain. I don't think that there are 4 votes on the council to do that, which is what would be required. So putting things on the circulation element that are not realistic does not make sense. I would encourage you to reject this proposal and adopt something that is actually attainable, or worst case scenario, to defer action on this until after the election, and we see if maybe there will be a change on the council, and maybe there will be 4 votes, but that'll at least be a decision that's left up to the new council. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nadine Scott. I want to thank staff and the consultants for all the time you put in it. So none of my comments will be directed at you. They're all directed at the policy makers. Having said that, the network key assumptions, how they were grouped, is just so wrong. There's no real logic to it. Although the Planning Commission dug through all of them and came up with a unanimous recommendation for alternative 2, the least damaging and most affordable and the most reasonable and progressive alternative. Instead, I'm sure we'll have the regressive dinosaur thinking on the council to stick with the old 1995 alternative with the minor addition of the couplet on Mission. You know, I have to be cruel and just say what it is. It's completely an exercise in self-abuse and mental masturbation. The public came forward, we discussed it, we gave ideas, they were largely ignored. The Planning Commission came forward, they gave you their ideas, they gave you the rationale behind their decision. You have completely ignored it and directed staff to come back with the oldest, most damaging, most financially ridiculous, non-feasible alternatives possible. Number one, Melrose, you've taken all $10 million dedicated out of the thoroughfare fund, so no other neighborhood or area will have anything done to ease actual traffic congestion, not future traffic congestion. Melrose will save 2 seconds. Melrose North will devastate our agricultural land, any hint of agritourism, any hint of revenue production that the progressive conservatives on the council claim they want, but are ignoring. One of the requirements is that this be feasible when you make these plan changes. Reasonable balancing of relevant economic, social, and technological factors. There is no financial study, as the Planning Commission adamantly instructed that would be done, and we all know these cannot be built. So we're going to take homes on Melrose, we're going to take homes on College. Mr. Feller used to be against that until he moved away from College. Now he's probably going to vote for that. Going to 6 lanes will take lots and lots and lots of people's houses. So we all know how the vote's going to go down. The taxpayers will be continuously burdened. The two of the previous speakers were 100% right when they said you don't do the circulation without a general plan update. It's absolutely ridiculous. None of the other changes suggested that would have been good possibilities, like working at Vista Way and I-78. Some changes could have been made there that would have made common sense. Back to old dinosaur thinking. Sorry to hear it.
Sheila Cada, 5301 Village Drive, Oceanside, California. This is just a waste of money. And it's not just a little bit of money, it's millions and millions of dollars, and it doesn't make sense. I know people from all over the world that come to Del Mar just to, you know, because they can ride their bikes and they love it there. We can make Oceanside better than Del Mar. We need to save the land. Have you been? I have friends in Iowa with the droughts. We need to save the agricultural. That is a good agricultural place. You know, our land is agricultural. None of this makes sense. For 2 seconds saving time in your car, it's like you blink your eye. It doesn't do anything. Take that money, do the things that they suggest, make the Pacific Coast Highway bicycle friendly with the roundabouts and all that, and make it that. We've got the new hotels coming in. That's going to draw people here. We have a great city. We've got agricultural area. We've got the best city in California. We've got the best weather. We've got agricultural area. We've got horse area. We've got the best beach. We've got the best mayor. We got the best city council with Esther Sanchez. We need to have other city council people that work for the people of Oceanside that aren't getting hundreds and thousands of dollars from people all over outside of the city of Oceanside for, you know, that they're working for. That's what I think. But anyway, we need to not waste this money on that. It doesn't make any sense at all.
My name is Mike Crowden. I live at 4522 Coronado Drive in Oceanside. And I'd like to share a secret with some of you who are still awake. There is an election for city council seats coming up. We know that there are budget limitations. We know that there are limitations on people's time, work, and energy. Please allow me a minute while I recite some of the needs of the city. Affordable housing. By the way, these are proposed needs and concerns of the city. Affordable housing, homelessness, recs and parks, attracting investment, support for business entrepreneurs, senior citizen support, library, museum, fire, police, opening a roadway to nowhere, forcing people from their homes, paving over an environmentally sensitive area. We have a budget. It's up to you folks to decide the priorities on the budget. Meanwhile, the citizens of Oceanside are watching.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Dana Corso. I live at 5838 Ranch View Road. I've been coming down here for the last 3 years because my neighborhood was directly impacted by the widening of 76, and we're still waiting for Jeffrey's Ranch Road to reopen. Melrose Extension, I've been to all of these hearings also. The entire Planning Commission voted no and said that there's significant impacts that cannot be mitigated to this area. This is a rural area. This place was packed. There wasn't one person that wanted the Melrose Extension to go through. It's fiscally irresponsible, $30 million when we're cutting parks and pools and libraries to go forward with this project. I have a picture here right now of kids that are crossing. We've got two schools. We've got an elementary school that has 600 kids in our neighborhood, and then they opened up a couple years ago Mission Vista High School that has 2,400 students now at it. These kids are crossing the road. 2 weeks ago, there was a car accident, and one of the kids got hit by a car. If Melrose Extension goes through, that we're going to put another 40,000 cars on the street. There's no cross guards. The safety is horrible. The fire department has already told us that their response time to Jeffrey's Ranch is slow to our neighborhood. We don't have the money for this project. It's very clear. I have been down here and consistently watched that you don't listen to any of the neighborhoods, you don't listen to the citizens, you don't listen to the commissioners. Most recent was June, the ballot for Proposition E. And Mr. Kern, you were all about property rights and how you defend people and their property rights. There's going to be 14 people that are going to lose their homes and their properties for eminent domain, forcefully taking their properties. How do you justify that? That's completely contradicting everything that you said all last year. The voters are smart now. I think they realize that you're only working for the people that are supporting your campaigns. And that's not what this is about. You're supposed to be here representing the people. And that's what I'll do if I get elected to council. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Mike Milano, and I live at 462 Wilshire. I believe that the Melrose Extension should be built all the way to North River Road. So I'm at least one person that agrees with that, and I think that there's quite a few people. It's we need the circulation element, and you certainly shouldn't eliminate the bridge over to North River until you decide what kind of development you're going to allow in South Morrow Hills. Right now, it's zoned for 2.5-acre lots. That means there'll be 1,000 homes up there, and those cars have to go someplace. So I don't think it's right to put them all on College Boulevard and North River Road. It would be much better to have the bridge. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Good evening.
Yes, members of the council, my name is Susanna Ray. I'm at 200 North El Camino Real, and I come before you. I know that when you are in politics, there are two things that are required: vision and a thick skin, because there will always be people who will not see your vision. But I would like to ask Mr. Kern and Mr. Feller and Mr. Feline, what possible vision will justify the assault that they have put upon the public, upon their staff, upon their planning commission, upon their own traffic engineers, and upon common sense itself? What vision justifies if you vote for this very ill-gotten and patched together piece of legislation. May you be forever remembered in the halls of infamy. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Lawrence, 3421 Cazares Drive, Rancho Del Oro. I speak a lot about how we want to preserve our neighborhoods. I think Jack knows me really well. I walk by his house about twice a week on my route through the neighborhood. I also campaign against him in that same neighborhood because I don't think he has our best interest in mind. I think once he wins an election, he doesn't listen to the people anymore, figures that they've already spoken with their vote. And I think he found out really quick when he backed Prop E that you got to listen to people after you're elected as well. And I don't think you're doing a good job of that, and that's why I don't think you should be reelected. It seems like there's a big flaw right now that we're not taking any kind of consideration when we do a circulation element about massive transit, putting buses in. You should see the neighborhoods around schools when they get let out. There's probably one car for each kid that goes to school. And that backs up, and that's bad planning. That's what buses were created for. Some of the money we spend for traffic might be spent better on school buses. Make it a lot safer for kids, because we don't have to wait till one dies to know it's a good idea not to have that many kids sitting on the street. Plus, you're going to rush traffic through there with traffic lights, and you think adults know how to use traffic lights. Kids don't know how to use it any better. So there's a lot of problems you're going to put into by speeding up traffic through neighborhoods. It's obvious. You're not listening, so I hope you get the message when you're looking for a job in November.
Hi, Pat Wallace, 1901 Bush Street. I would like to second. It seems to me that the mass transportation, it seems to me that it's just such an obvious thing that Oceanside has the possibility at this point of becoming a city that is really known for biking, walking, public transportation. It just seems to me such an evident thing, and yet we keep thinking cars and roads. Cars, roads, parking. I just strongly second mass transportation.
Good evening. Good evening. Jim Ciano, 1618 Trotting Horse Road. I'm speaking in opposition to primarily the Melrose extension on several things which previous speakers have talked about, including, in fact, Dana kind of stole my thunder on the high school, and the traffic is really bad there during the morning and the afternoon, just prior to and then after school. That it's, if any of you have ever sat there, if any of you have ever sat there or just would go there and watch what happens there, I think that it would be given pause to reconsider that extension. Number two, the bridge, the civil work that's going to be required to span the San Luis area right there is going to be quite extensive and very expensive, and it's and that's something that needs to be taken into account before this project would ever even really be considered to get off the ground. And there's no reason for this. I think that if you would just go with if we can't afford a right turn in and right turn out on Jeffrey's Ranch, we certainly cannot afford all that's going to be entailed on this Melrose extension. And finally, I'd like to say that the questions that were asked by these various speakers is not rhetorical in nature. They demand an answer from the various people. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Could you spell your last name for the record, please?
Your phone didn't ring all day long until you got up there to speak, I know.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Woods, council members, and staff. I am Leslie Brooks at 1524 Belmont Park Road in Oceanside in Jeffries Ranch. And I'm here tonight for Nancy Bernardi, who had a Bible study to attend to. So I'll read her words, and I might throw in a few of my own. Okay, she says, Honorable council members, this letter is to strongly urge you not to include the extension of Melrose within the Jeffries Ranch neighborhood. You have heard our unyielding opposition to this extension since it was brought up after the closure of Jeffries Ranch Road in preparation for the widening of Highway 76. The reasons of our opposition are as follows. Number one, it is not needed. The current streets handle the traffic very efficiently. I've taken note on numerous occasions when the majority of traffic goes from Melrose to Santa Fe. Most of the traffic coming from Melrose and Vista exiting onto Santa Fe is never backed up to the point of not clearing for the signal duration. It seems that the majority of those turning left onto Santa Fe end up in the left turn lane to head west on Highway 76. This indicates that College Boulevard is not doing the job it was designed to do. A few inexpensive fixes would improve the traffic flow on College. And then she offers a couple of suggestions. And I have one of these for each of you too. And then she says, number two, too many homes, agricultural properties, open space, and wildlife habitat must be taken by eminent domain to accomplish this extension. This will ruin one of the few, if only, rural neighborhoods in Oceanside. Impacts will also be felt by the elementary school and surrounding neighborhoods. Again, where is the need, the rush for approval, and basis for spending the enormous amount of money that the city doesn't have to justify this extension? Number three, who wants to live next to high sound walls? This again will destroy the peaceful neighborhood to many, many residents. Number four, this extension will actually draw more traffic into our area and neighborhood, mainly serving people who want a shortcut from other areas. Why would our city council, who is there to serve its residents, want to approve this unnecessary expenditure and severely impact its residents and open space? Number five, I don't understand where the passion comes from those council members who desperately want this extension. In a severe economic downturn where every resident and municipalities alike must cut back and maintain existing services and infrastructure, why the insistence on an extension that had been ignored and taken off the planning maps for years? Never has a roadway been so passionately pursued by so few. It doesn't make sense. And then number six, she says, EIR findings conclude that many environmental impacts cannot be mitigated. So anyway, that's from Nancy. And I would just like to add, and I know my time is up, but you know, we are an equestrian area, and we have people that go down into Bohomie Park, and if this road goes through, there's just no way to get a horse through that. Plus, there's children that are living on both sides of this Melrose, and I think it's a detriment. And I think it's a shame to take the properties of people who own those properties. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address this item?
I see, I see.
Yeah.
I almost gobbled you out. Go right ahead. This is a public hearing. You don't need a slip. Go ahead. Just give your name and address.
Karen Green. I live in the Sleeping Indian area of Oceanside. Got here a little late, so I didn't hear the other speakers, but this is a topic that I'm familiar with, having participated in a lot of the public workshops relative to the circulation element. So,
Could you put the mic up closer?
yeah, I just would like to express a concern really about the process. You know, being a CEQA project, it's a public process that's used for evaluating impacts to communities. And this project had a lot of public involvement in the various workshops, which resulted in, you know, the two alternatives that then the Planning Commission commented on. And I understand that the City Council prefers to go back and just leave the circulation element as it is, with some modifications that are relatively minor in terms of traffic calming. My concern living in the Morro Hills area is leaving on the table the bridge, the potential for a bridge over North River Road that would bring a lot of traffic into the eastern area, into an agricultural area of Oceanside. So I wanted to express that concern and ask the council to consider this in terms of what the current residents, sort of the process of CEQA, of considering the concerns of current residents, not the faceless, nameless future residents that nobody knows who those are. And, to consider the input that you're getting from the public about the real concerns, and to consider that in your decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll try this again. Is there anybody else out there? If not, and I see nobody walking forward, I'll close this public hearing and come back to the city council. I don't know if staff wishes to address any concerns that may be an issue before we get back to the council.
I have a couple of items I'd like to mention, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Pardon?
I have a couple of responses to some
Sure, go right ahead. That's why I called on you.
Great. With respect to the land use element, as part of the circulation element update, we did look at all of the existing land uses. We took into consideration all of the zoning amendments that have occurred over the last, 10, 20 years. Any vision plan or specific plan that comes forward for a corridor study or for Coast Highway, for example, we would certainly include a general plan amendment to the circulation element as part of that environmental process. So I'd like to think of the circulation element as a living document that could be changed and tweaked as future needs dictate. There was some mention and concern about College Boulevard, for example, as being one street that's kind of being, left out with of the modified 95, but that's the staff's intention to follow up as part of a project study report that we did back in 2010 to, recapture that hybrid alternative that we recommended as part of Alternative 1 and bring that back as part of the environmental document for the plans that we're doing, that we're going to be designing for 6 lanes along College between Avenida La Plata and Olive. The intent is to preserve the 4-lane classification through the neighborhood down to Waring, where we'd actually flare out Waring Drive on the north side of College to have 6 receiving lanes that currently exist south of Waring on College. So that's in the works. We've got a few other similar scenarios like that we'll certainly bring back to council at a future update. At this time, we felt it was important to make sure that we included Melrose's 4 lanes and the one-way couplet with this update. It's also important to understand that the circulation element doesn't look at freeways. That is, those are state facilities, so Caltrans is responsible for those. The focus of the circulation element is for the local roadways. The circulation, there tends to be a lot of, I think, public interest in the future roadway network, but it's important to understand that the circulation element has a whole host of policies and programs that have also been updated that are aimed at reducing congestion, aimed at providing pedestrian and bicycle facilities and other mode choices to the city residents. In addition to that, we've got transportation demand management programs that we've updated as well. These programs will be identified in developer conference meetings and so forth for new developers that come to the city and build a new project. We'll certainly put that project within the context of the updated policies and programs. So the aim is to try and give our citizens other mode choices as well as other measures to reduce the reliance on the single occupant vehicle. Complete Streets is another program that we've embraced, and we'll certainly be looking at implementing those philosophies into our new developments as well. Financially speaking, we do have a thoroughfare fee program that's currently in place. We plan on updating that thoroughfare fee program to account for the streets that haven't been constructed, and also exploring other opportunities to fund these projects, possibly in the form of a uniform mitigation fee program for the city, and other financial opportunities will be explored to help fund these. Now, it's also important to understand that new developments, if they front a an area that doesn't have a road, that is slated to have a road constructed, they will be more than likely responsible for constructing those new extensions as well. So we have a number of options financially to construct these new roadways. Melrose Drive extension originally was a 6-lane major arterial. We've downgraded that to 4 lanes, and then this is the southerly extension between North Santa Fe and Spur Avenue. It does improve the fire response time from the existing fire station at Mesa and North Santa Fe. They don't have to go around North Santa Fe and 76 to get to Jeffrey's Ranch. They can just go east on North Santa Fe and then turn left on Melrose to get there. It also provides relief for College, North Santa Fe, and College Boulevard. And it's really important to understand that we're looking at these future roadways in the context of a future condition. So 2030, year 2030, our expectation is that we'll have more vehicles on the roadway. It's conservative thinking. We're certainly moving in a direction to try and minimize those trips through other programs like transportation demand management and so forth. But at this time, I think it's safe to be conservative to keep those in the plan. Transit, neighborhood traffic calming, pedestrian master plan, bicycle master plan, the city's level of service standards for the way roadways operate. These are all programs and policies that have been updated and will influence how the city and staff conditions new projects and existing projects to make improvements or develop a new project in town, again, to try and reduce the number of vehicle trips on the roadway. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Kern, please.
Thank you, John. You answered all my questions before I even asked them. So that was pretty good. Just a couple things. I did take the bicycle tour of Long Beach and how they treated the bicycles downtown and stuff. I think that's something that's really important that we need to do along Coast Highway. So to get the ball rolling, I'm going to move approval of staff recommendation and adopt a resolution certifying the final program environmental impact report for the circulation element update modified 1995 and the circulation element, and adopting the mitigation monitoring and reporting program and a statement of overriding consideration, adoption of resolution approving general plan amendment GPA 10-0001 for an update of the circulation element for the general plan, and approve amendment 4 in the amount of $23,259 for the professional service agreement with the IBI group for the circulation element to develop the CEQA findings, the mitigation, the monitoring and reporting program, and revise the draft circulation element document for the modified 1995 circulation element alternative, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. That's the motion, but also in addition to that, I would like to give direction to staff. I'd like to have the rest of the council support on the Coast Highway strategy and direct staff to initiate the Coast Highway traffic improvements. So that, one was the motion and the other one's just a direction.
I'll second. Thank you very much.
Right.
Councilmember Sanchez, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the last hearing, I talked about how this circulation update doesn't make sense because it is upside down. We should be talking about our land use and in our general plan and not talking about our circulation element first. What's before us assumes that we are going to be urbanizing South Morrill Hills. That's really what this is all about. It's the Melrose extension, the bridge, when in a separate document, the update of our sewer lines, talking about actually doing more than we ever have for South Morrill Hills, which is not a sewer. There is no sewer plant out there. We've never collected fees from developers for sewer water. This has all been agricultural. It was agricultural when folks bought out there. It still is. This really concerns me. Every single project that the community doesn't want is on here. And I want to talk about process because when you update a circulation element, it should be based on public input. And meetings all over should have taken place. At the last hearing, there was a gentleman from the Paula community, Paula Street community, who didn't know anything about this. It's the first time that he had heard about this. And yet, there was extensive communications with the community about the Paula extension and deleting that based on the project over at the outdoor cinemas. So I don't believe we did an appropriate public process. I think we shortcut it. I think we cheapened our community, and in cutting costs, we cut out public process. We cut out public input. On top of that, we didn't listen to the public input that we received. The public was very clear about what it wanted. It did not want the Rancho del Oro interchange. That's over $100 million project. It's not even a regional project. It's only an oceanside project. Caltrans does not allow for half interchanges. That was something that we discussed early on in the process of the interchange. It cannot be connected to Carlsbad. All it's going to do is ruin the property values and lives of Oceanside residents. Oceanside residents who bought their homes based on this changed land use. It was commercial. It made sense to have an interchange when it was commercial. When it changed to residential, it stopped making any sense. With respect to the bridge, that is a development-inducing item, should not be here. Coast Highway, I'm going to support the direction with regards to Coast Highway, but everything else here should not go forward. It is putting the cart before the horse. Now, the one thing that I really think is truly inconsistent and is not good policy for us is that we seem to be treating some streets as being livable. For example, Coast Highway, but treating our neighborhood streets as not being livable streets. That is where we should have our bike paths. We should have bike paths everywhere, not just on Coast Highway. Instead, we want to create freeways through neighborhoods and then have to react to residents when they say, we have speeding here, we have traffic problems here. I mean, we don't need street lights on Rancho del Oro Road, and yet here we are, we're putting money into street lights that are not necessary. I don't believe that the findings that have been really put together just to try to make this mean something and rationalize this plan, I don't believe that our findings are sufficient. These are unmitigatable impacts, huge impacts to our community. Traffic is going to be terrible. We're setting our community up for a lower quality of life. We're cutting out a park that's been there for years, for decades, Guajome Park. We're saying it's okay to take part of that park. We're saying it's okay to set us up for eminent domain. We're saying it's okay to take the homes of private citizens. This is not a path that we should even be considering, not even for half a second. We should be considering what is best for Oceanside, what is best for quality of life for our residents. So I will be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Councilmember Lane, please.
Thank you. I was worried the sky was going to be falling here. This is actually a real simple vote, and I think there's a lot of overreaction. That's totally unnecessary. What we have before us is simply a way to keep all options on the table for this council and any future council. There's nothing in this document that requires any of these projects to be built and isn't forcing any of them to be built in the future. Those are all separate votes that will be taken based on how people feel at the time. Now, certainly as far as community input, I speak for myself, and I certainly think I can speak for Jack and Jerry, that every election that we've run in, we've said we've supported the Melrose extension and the Rancho Del Oro interchange, and we're the ones who are sitting up here. So I think the public did express their opinion on those issues. And certainly I don't think there's any businessman in the city who's going to say destroying the Rancho Del Oro interchange improved our ability to attract business to the Ocean Ranch Business Park. And it's, you know, one of the great travesties that showed that Oceanside was not a reliable business partner to people who want to create jobs and create opportunity in our city. And so, yeah, you know, unfortunately, having that destroyed a few years ago really set the city back. It'll be a long time to have that repaired, but it certainly should be an option that's on the table, so that if the opportunity comes to make it go through, we can do it. Same with all these other items. You know, I don't know if there will ever be a bridge across the river for Melrose. That's you know, what the residents and what the people, you know, want to decide for that future. And certainly future city councils will address that issue, you know. And so, you know, I think the point here was to keep all options on the table, so that future councils can decide. As options come up for, like, Coast Highway, for example, we can modify them on a project by project basis, and that way things move forward. You know, it's certainly a lot easier to take something off in the future than it will be to ever put it back on once it's removed. And so I think too many demands to remove these projects is short-sighted, and, you know, we have people claiming to have omniscient powers to foresee what future citizens are going to want. I don't claim to have that kind of power, and I just want to have future residents of the city have all options on the table for them to consider. So I'll be voting yes.
Deputy Mayor Feller, please.
Thank you. Have we taken into consideration the Marone Road McMillan project and, in this element at all?
Councilmember Feller, we did. We're working with Quarry Creek right now. The assumption is that Marin Road would not be connected. We had coordinated with all the North County cities, Carlsbad Vista and San Marcos and so on, to make sure that the model network reflected what their current circulation element plans and their land use element plans showed at the time. So there was a coordinated effort to make sure that the modeling was as tight as it can be with respect to our interjurisdictional neighbors in terms of their assumptions for roads and land use.
What happens if we close Marone on our end?
If we close it on our end?
Just like they did on their end.
Well, it wouldn't connect to El Camino Real, so that's going to put more traffic on to College Boulevard, and that's part of the challenge that we're faced with right now with Quarry Creek. We're working with them on their environmental document, and they've got a whole list of mitigation measures and improvements that we're asking them to do on College to at least enhance the capacity to move traffic through there.
Okay, well, it's going to be a disaster. By complete streets, you essentially are talking about completing all projects.
No.
Or explain that a little bit.
Sure. Complete streets is a buzzword that's used to make streets usable by all modes of traffic. If you're driving a vehicle, if you're walking, if you're bicycling, if you want to ride a bus, get to a rail station, Complete Streets provides facilities to make sure that those types of activities, mode choices happen. I think traditionally speaking, there's a lot of streets that have sidewalk right next to the street, and there's very little grass parkway. Complete Streets looks to provide some kind of separation between the vehicles and pedestrians and bicyclists, for example.
I did want to mention that it changed the Rancho Del Oro interchange. That property there changed to commercial after three council members threw away $1.2 million on the EIR. It wouldn't have happened that way. You've explained here that we are not taking homes on College. Is that, we were just told we were taking hundreds of homes.
No, we're not taking any homes on College.
Okay. How large a piece of Guahomie Park is involved on that
Melrose extension
segment that we selected?
Yeah. We impacted about 3.5 acres of parkland that's existing. Now, there's about an acre south of North Santa Fe that was also included in that, and that's not really used by the park, but it does have some substantial important habitat there. We're replacing that with 4 acres of parkland that's just to the west side of Melrose, and it's in the park area, so it actually, you were creating more accessible park area for anybody that uses it, whereas the chunks that were disturbed with the Melrose are kind of piecemeal here and there and that aren't really very accessible, so I think it's a good thing.
Okay. And those are homes that are in the county, is that correct?
Yes.
That would be the properties
Right.
that would be affected
Right.
Generally there.
Mhm.
And I would, I would hope that there is some friendly conversations when, in 20 years, when this is built, that maybe that is the conversations that take place. Let's see. I am definitely for open roads. I would love to see Cannon go through from 78 all the way to the coast, which is probably very detrimental to the residents of Oceanside because, those people that are out in that area are pretty trapped. Marone to El Camino, the Miramonte Road that is built and has K-rail across it, Carlsbad, Jeffries Ranch, right in, right out. I mean, I support that, and I hope we can figure out a way for that. And I support Melrose and the Rancho Del Oro interchange, even if it is a half interchange. If we ask the feds and the state as a council and a community for that money, we may not be able to get all of it from them, but we can designate, and by the time this gets built, millions and millions of dollars will be available to us from Transnet and those types of things. And the last thing I would say is we're pretty hamstrung by the pages and pages of environmental regulations that are put into play, and that is literally what's costing millions and millions of dollars. So I support this. I did want to make it one mention of busing for schools. We don't have control over that, and I don't know that will ever be under the city council's purview as far as unless we got involved to help the school districts do that busing program. And I'm sure they'd be willing to take our help if we had the money to do it. So anyway, those are my comments. Oh, I do have one letter from Shelby Jacobs. He says, I am and have always been a strong advocate for the Melrose extension as it will ultimately allow alternate access to Jeffries Ranch. We are literally stuck in here when 76 is closed due to accidents. And he was very adamant about that when I had a conversation with him this morning. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Peter, Mr. City Manager, your comment? That you did. Okay, with that, Esther, please.
Yeah, just briefly.
You had your
Yeah,
light
just
on.
briefly. I wanted to correct something that Councilmember Feline said. Because if it was just to leave our options open, that's a simple statement, and, why not, right? If nothing's going to happen, if we're going to leave no development unless, the road, unless there is, all the other things, fine. But that's not what's going to happen. Developers rely on the roads that are approved. Developers rely. And so all of these impacts will happen to neighbors, to neighborhoods. And that is what it's going to lower our property values, lower our quality of life. And with respect to the interchange, again, we've spoken to Caltrans over and over again, and back in Washington, D.C. They will not fund a controversial project. The interchange is a highly controversial project. It is not a regional project. So it will never get funded, but you'll have development relying on it. So you shake your head, Councilmember Feller, but I have had dozens of conversations with high-level legislators, and they will not fund this. What they will fund are projects that are supported by the community. There are not enough tax dollars in transportation funds and transportation dollars to fund every single project there is in the United States. They are not going to fund this one. Who is? Residents of Oceanside. How would we like to have a tax bill to pay an over $100 million project? We don't. So, just to correct the record. Thanks.
Thank you. I see all the lights are off. My turn. Mine shouldn't take longer than an hour and a half. For all you out there. I've discussed this thing time and time again. I'm not going to beat you up tonight. I agree with Councilmember Sanchez on all these issues that we've been brought up, that you brought up. I apparently can't change anybody's mind. I understand that. I accept that. The only way you can do that and change this, I can't, is give me a third person on the council or change the council. That's up to you people out there in the audience. Mr. Fellaini always says this is how he was voted into office, and that must be correct. He was voted into office. I agree with him. So if you still like it, fine. If you don't, change it. That's your choice out there. The one thing I did want to mention is I agree that I think we need to look at Coast Highway. We had planned for a long time to doing a walkable community, pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly, business-friendly. And I know traffic engineers and planners want to move traffic faster, not slow it down, but it seems to be an in vogue thing for the whole coast down here in San Diego County. It needs to be looked at, and from a different view. And I know you guys always want to move things, and sometimes we're saying slow it down for bicycles, pedestrians, and businesses. I'd like to have a closer look at that too, and I think that's something we would like to see. And I would hope to support that. Other than that, I'm not going to beat you to death with a dead horse. We've done it before. So all I'm going to tell you is let's please vote on it.
Motion approved, 3-2. Wood and Sanchez, no.
And I want to give a clarification that I do support the direction with respect to Coast Highway.
Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, I've heard that there's at least 3 of you that are supportive of Coast Highway and possibly more. I see heads shaking. We would have to come back with a separate item to initiate that process and appropriate the money, and so we will do that at a future council meeting.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate you, that you were actually listening. I think that's wonderful. And thank you, staff. I do appreciate, ladies and gentlemen that showed up, I thank you. Sorry it took so long, and you didn't even get up here to talk. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, if you've got a moment, how about item number 25?
Item 25 is a request by Councilmember Fellaini to require staff to use all direct and indirect costs, including but not limited to a reasonable apportionment of the annual increases in the city's long-term unfunded pension liabilities and unfunded retiree health care costs as part of all outsourcing evaluations and direction to staff.
Thank you. I know this is an item that only an accountant can love, and you're going to have to hold your eyelids open here, but I think it's important. And the issue is, if we're going to compare costs of doing something within the city compared to costs of companies doing it outside of the city staff, we need to have an apples-to-apples comparison, and that means we need to include the full retirement costs in comparing bids. And right now, I believe those costs are woefully understated. Currently, we are charging, and there's always a year-and-a-half lag with CalPERS, but as of 6/30/2010, our total payment by the city, it was 29% for the actual cash that we were being billed by CalPERS, as well as paying the pension bonds. But in addition to that, over the past 12 years since the pensions were adjusted, our unfunded liability in terms of what's the difference between your liability versus your actuarial value of assets has gone up to be $90 million. In addition to that, we have unrecognized stock market losses of $112 million. That's roughly $203 million of expenses that have built up that we've incurred based on services that are providing that CalPERS hasn't billed us for, but they plan to bill us for in the future. These are real expenses, and they need to be accounted for in how we compare bids. And I don't claim to have the silver bullet on the best way to do that. So, let me back step a moment here. When you look at those expenses and average them out over, the 10 years, that those unfunded liabilities that have been accruing add another 30% to pension expenses approximately. So you're basically talking about half of the pension expense isn't being factored in to our costs when we're comparing it to outside options. So my motion is simply to instruct staff to return to council in 60 days policies to account for all direct and indirect costs, including but not limited to a reasonable apportionment of the annual increases in the city's long-term unfunded pension liabilities and unfunded retiree health care costs as part of all outsourcing evaluations.
What was that motion again? No, I'll second.
Thank you. I can only do it with one breath here.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager or staff, do we like to address some of these questions? I don't know, we have retiree health care unfunded or whatever, I don't know. Is that even anything we have? I don't know if you want.
Given the changes that you made in your recent MOUs as of January, the primary cost for the unfunded health, the liability for the health care was within the fire department, and that will be changing as of January 1st.
Thank you, sir. I wasn't sure. Good afternoon. Please respond to any of these
Good
issues.
evening. I think the request to come back to council in 60 days, or within 60 days, that would be before November. We are actually in the process right now of wrapping up the June 30th audit. And what we do is in the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, we provide a lot of the June 30th, 2012 liabilities. So I would just ask if it would be sometime in November or December, whenever we finish that CAFR, we'll have up-to-date information, be able to give that to you, and then perhaps some recommendations.
Well, my point is to make sure, for example, when we just debated the street sweeper issue, that we didn't get the full retirement costs factored, the bill that was incurred, because only half of it was charged by CalPERS and the other half was left to compound as part of the pension bubble that continues to grow every year. So I'm saying when we're comparing these bids, we need to compare the half, also include the half that's continuing to basically expand in a nice big balloon, because those are real costs that someone's going to come to us and demand that we get paid in the future.
Sure. Can I just clarify again what it is that you were looking for within the
What I'm looking for is to, when we compare in-house expenses versus an outside bid, that we include all the retirement costs. That we're not just including what CalPERS has billed us for, because they're not billing us for the whole cost. They're allowing, the unfunded liabilities to expand, and they've expanded now to the point of $90 million. They also don't include the $112 million in unrecognized stock market losses that's incurred in our plan. So we have $200 million of liability that's built up, that based on retirement expenses that employees have incurred, that we haven't been charged, and that we're not factoring in when we compare bids. And that there needs to be some method to say we need to apportion part of this $90 million. Now, one can debate on the stock market losses, another $112 million. Personally, I think that should be factored in, but I am open if there's something I'm missing there, but I don't see how you could possibly justify not including the $90 million in unfunded liabilities being amortized on a per employee basis in some way to compare and outsourcing bids.
Okay. Having looked at this just a little very briefly before tonight's meeting, and we were saying about CalPERS, I agree. We don't know. We rely on the numbers they give us. They give us an actuarial report, which is always at least a year behind. There's numerous components. It's not just the market rate. It's based on estimation of how long people are going to live. It's estimations of their health. There's a lot of criteria. I'm sure you've read the actuarial report, lots of criteria. So they give us their guess, and they say, this is how much we think you owe us, City of Oceanside. Now, if you have 100 employees and they're paying into that, and then you reduce your staff and you're down to 90 employees, you still have to pay them. So what happens is your per employee rate now has gone up, because the difference has to be absorbed by the remaining staff members. If I can put a chart up here.
While you're doing that and getting it set up, Mr. City Manager, please.
Mayor, Council, I just want to clarify, the only current outsourcing proposal we're working on is the harbor, and we don't anticipate that process resolving itself and being brought to council probably until February.
Yeah, I'm happy to allow more time if you're in the middle of projects. I mean, if 90 days or year end makes it easier, and especially in view of the city manager. I'm just saying that, we've had $90 million of costs that have built up, that someone's going to come looking for us to pay, that we're not accounting for when we look at just including the bills we get from CalPERS, because they're basically making a huge bubble to try and hide what the real costs are, or make them not visible, when we're basically smoothing over 15 years and then amortizing the losses over another 30 years, and then recasting the loan every year as a first year payment, and this is hyper aggressive accounting that isn't, giving a true picture to the taxpayers as far as the risk that they're assuming. And so I think certainly when we're comparing private sector costs to public sector costs, we need to factor in this huge bubble that's growing every year. I should say between 2009 and 2010, where were we at here? Yeah, $7 million increase. The year before that, $36 million. The year before that, $22 million. The year before that, $9 million. Those are real costs that we can't sweep under the rug when we're comparing it to private sector costs.
I don't disagree with you on that. It is always my concern about the unfunded liability as well. But what I was trying to show up here, let's just make the numbers very, very simple just for demonstration purposes. The first graph there is sort of a very simplistic, if we were to outsource, if we were to keep in-house a program that has 4 employees. And you will see there's a line item there for pension. I'm just trying to separate out the pension for $70,000, and it shows a 3% escalator because CalPERS says we're going to charge you 3% a year more. if you were to outsource, the difference by eliminating those employees, and the city has to pick up the difference, it now becomes a cost we have to add on to the outsourced side, because the city has to still pay that, whether the employees are here or not. So in this example, if you had 5 positions eliminated and that cost of $1,200 a year had to be picked up by the city, 1,200 times 5 employees, that $6,000 has to be factored into the outsourced proposal and then build it in. Whatever that number is, whatever the formula is, it gets added on the outsourced side because it's a cost to the city. It's not an additional cost to the in-house side because we're already paying that.
Well, I want to make sure we're not, because obviously, as we build this up, if every employee left tomorrow, you would still have payments we'd have to make based on what they incurred in the past. And that's true, that doesn't go away, but that bubble keeps building every day, but you eliminate the bubble growing in the future.
That's correct.
Right. So that's the future costs that I want to factor in that we would save in an outsourcing bid.
Right.
Because, to say that, well, because, and I don't know, this idea that, we have to incur this cost even when the employees leave, isn't that the definition of a Ponzi scheme? I hate to be graphic here, but, no private sector financial company needs to depend on future customers to pay a past obligation. You're basically, each risk is adjusted on its own. And I don't know, hearing that we need future employees to pay for the past ones, I think every taxpayer out there ought to be scared to death that that's how CalPERS is being run. So I think, basically, I'm just looking for that we have that future bubble that would otherwise be growing, that's factored in when we compare private sector to public sector costs.
Sure. We can do that.
Okay.
Councilmember Sanchez, if you...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, we are addressing our pension issues, as is every city, every municipality, county. We are addressing that. Every business, everyone is doing this. What's before us, though, is, having listened to this conversation, I don't think, first of all, because this is so confusing. I don't know if there's anyone else that talks like you, Mr. Feline, or understands what you're saying. You have a unique way of looking at the world and at looking at finances. You have a unique way of looking at numbers that doesn't really compute to general practices. And I know what you're getting at, but I don't think that this is the way to do it. I think that, having a conversation amongst the rest of the council, maybe with staff at a workshop, might be better, but you're wanting to just, throw your very unique way of looking at the world and looking at, what the problems are and then what the solutions are, is, it's not helpful. It's not realistic. If you really care to address this, I would, I would hope that you would at least have a conversation that everybody can participate in. This is not one that I can. I obviously don't share your views on the world, but I do share your concerns. And so if there is if there is some way, some place where we can somehow meet in the middle to address these issues, and I think that's what we need to do, is find some way that, you're way over here, and I want to do something about what we have, the problems. But if you're going to be not letting us get to some common ground, then I don't think we're ever going to solve this. And that's the bottom line. Don't we want to solve this? So those are my words. I can't support this. This is just too way out there. I support the thought behind it in terms of let's try to resolve our issues. I don't support the actual action. Thanks.
Councilmember Kern, please.
Thank you. I will agree with Councilmember Sanchez in one respect, that Councilmember Feline has a degree in finance, and obviously our Director of Finance has a degree in finance, and they're talking at a little bit different level than what we're normally used to up here, even though we're responsible to make these decisions. I took 2 finance classes way in the back in the last century, and some of the words sound familiar, but not all the details. I think the bottom line is that we're not going to try to solve anything here. I think what Councilmember Feline is just asking for is that when we go forward with these outsourcing opportunities or privatization opportunities, that we have a full accounting of what the actual costs are. I don't think that's all, so it would help you make those decisions, that you would have that full accounting. You know, the idea that earlier tonight, Councilmember Feller on the outsourcing thing asked a lot of questions very similar to this to get to a point. So I think having all those numbers in front of us when we make our decisions, I think it's important for all of us. Now, you know, for us up here to make those decisions as policymakers, I think that's very important. So hopefully we can come back. Evidently, I'm hearing that 60 days is a problem because you're in the middle of your audit, but according to City Manager, our next outsourcing opportunity is not until February, approximately. So between now and then, when that comes forward, we should have those numbers in front of us so we can make a real, true evaluation of what those significant savings are or are not. So I think that's all we're asking for, is that we get a true reflection of what those costs are. I don't think it's here to solve any problem whatsoever. Maybe, you know, the city treasurer, he's probably got a finance degree too. He probably understood every single word that was said up here. So with that, that's why I'm supporting this. All we're going to do is come back and get information the next time we make a decision.
Thank you. I'm not supporting it. I agree. Well, one thing, I think all this information comes to us every time we get a new item or some issue comes up, which we're looking into, outsourcing or whatever, between staff, finance, and city manager, and or even the city attorney. We get that information on a one-to-one basis, depending on what it is. Speculating in the future what it could be is confusing to me. I agree. And I'll have to agree with Councilman Kern. I didn't understand a lot of this language either. It's kind of like you don't respond because you don't want to look that stupid. But I'm going to say I missed it. But with that being said, I'll go on. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to correct the record here again. My degree was actually in urban studies. I have a BA in urban studies, and I took graduate classes at San Diego State in urban planning, including finance, and I have a law degree. So this is not lost to me. It's a particular view that is lost to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Martha, please vote.
Mayor, before we vote, we still have one step.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I changed it from 2 to 1 to 0 back to 1. Okay. It's
And,
one.
and also, I need clarification on the motion if he's going to change the 60 days.
I think the city attorney might do that, but let's go with the public real quick.
Do you prefer a
Okay.
date? It's like January 31st or December 31st or 90 days? What would be more convenient?
I believe 90 days will give us
We'll
time.
go for 90 days.
Okay, the speaker's Jimmy Knott.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. You also have forgotten something as well that's very important to the city manager. And this is the cost of doing this project. You already given 2 items tonight that you have not costed out. You gave out the Coast Highway project. That was not costed out and given to the public. This duty here tonight was not costed out for the finance department and given to the public. You have just merely assigned it and not given any cost to the public on how this will have impact in fiscal numbers or in actual time from the department and whether it will have impact to the department. This is important as much as the information that you'll be getting, because this could impact the budget for their departments. You need to consider this. I think you need to take and start, when you assign something, take and get that information before you actually give it out and have it reported back to you. The other side of the coin is that you were just considering an item where a couple of the members up there said that they couldn't predict the future. Now you're trying to predict the future. Because what happens is that who knows? The CalPERS could have a good gain that could offset a lot of the losses. You don't know. You're trying to take and count horses' teeth again. You're taking and trying to predict the future. You can only take and look at what is the present and the past. You can try to make assumptions, but sometimes assumptions can turn out to be totally wrong. This is what we need to do, is just to look what we know to take place. And as I have always said in the past, you look at the most optimistic and the most pessimistic type of values. Prepare for one and prepare for the other. Don't just look for one side only. If you do, you're fooled.
Is that it? Thank you, Mayor. I indicated earlier, please vote. Please vote.
Motion approved, 3-2. Wood and Sanchez, no.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could we go to 26? Mr. City Attorney.
Item 26 is adoption of an ordinance, and we have 2 requests to speak.
Mr. City Attorney, sir.
I'll go ahead and title it, and then I guess you could hear from the public.
Sure.
Okay. This is an ordinance, adoption of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside, amending Chapter 35 of the Oceanside City Code regarding the regulation of taxi cabs.
Thank you. Is there a public in this?
Yes, we have 2 speakers.
Hello, I'm Jenny Oakson. I live in Carlsbad, but I'm the owner of Coastal Cab, which does a lot of business in Oceanside. I'm asking you tonight to postpone the adoption of this ordinance, rescind your decision, and eliminate Article 2, Section 35.5A. That's my big beef. That is the article that restricts non-licensed cab companies, non-licensed in Oceanside, like myself, from drop-offs from an outside the city limits of Oceanside inside more than 5 times per 30 days. Now for Coastal Cab in particular, on a given Friday night, we drop off more than 5 times in 1 hour in Oceanside. No other city has a restriction like this. It's impossible to enforce, and I believe it would be a waste of your police resources. I spoke all week with the San Diego Sheriff's Department, who's in charge of all licensing for North County and San Diego County taxi drivers, and their representatives were shocked that you would try to legislate limited drop-offs. All of my drivers, except for myself, actually live in Oceanside. That's 9 votes. 100% of our auto body repairs and maintenance is conducted in Oceanside. You're asking me to tell all Oceanside residents that I pick up outside of Oceanside to call an LA company like 24/7 or a national conglomerate like Yellow Cab for a ride home from your neighbors, Carlsbad and Encinitas. So at the very least, remove this drop-off restriction to the amendment, but please also consider reopening this amendment for public hearing. Yes. Right, I'm not going to be able to come back down.
Excuse me, could you reference the section that you were...
Yes, it's Article 2, Section 35.5, parentheses A.
That's the section that exempts the requirements of this code. So it provides the following vehicles are exempt from the terms of 35.4.
And you'll see that
That's drop-offs.
35.5, same exact exemptions.
Right, that's an exemption from the requirements of that code section. Perhaps I could get with the speaker after the council's vote.
Debbie, I'll have a city attorney meet with you. We're going to finish in a little while. That might help. And you wouldn't have to stay here all night. How's that?
Okay, the second speaker is John Agatep.
Good evening. I know you missed last time.
Yeah. John Agatep, Carlsbad, 3133 Jefferson Street, owner of Tri-City Cab. We handle a majority of the 4- and 5-star hotels in Carlsbad. Those hotels expect us to pick up their clients and take them to their destinations. A majority of the time, we're taking them to Oceanside, and we have to drop them off. And then the client says, can we have your card to pick back up? Our response to them has to be now, sorry, we can't pick you back up because we don't have a license in Oceanside to pick up. You'll have to call somebody else. And when they look at us like, oh, well, what did we do to you guys to do that? So it causes now to a situation where we can't even drop off. Now we can't, that's less revenue for you guys. And then Friday and Saturday nights in downtown Carlsbad, all those people coming out, the majority of them are coming back here. They get in the car, sorry, we can't take you to Oceanside. It just doesn't make sense to pass this. There's parts of it that are okay, but it needs to be revised, and some of the things need to be closer looked at. And when the people are calling us, and 30% of our calls come from Oceanside, and I have to sit there and tell them, sorry, we can't pick you up, only 2 other companies. Why does my business have to build another company's business? Where's the fair competition that council was speaking about earlier, when it's just 1 or 2 companies only, and one of those companies is based in Los Angeles, where their sister cities have to be kicked to the side, sorry, can't do that. I say that you guys look at this a little bit closer, and we sit down and finite it. Allow companies to come in without having to be 10 or more cars at minimum. Allow the people to choose the companies that they want to pick them up. And then if there's an issue with too many cars being inside the city, like in downtown or the train station, limit the licensing to, if you can license the companies to drop off and pick up in Oceanside, but if you want to hang out at the train station, there's an additional fee for your cars to be at that particular location so they're not over flooding the dynamics of what's needed down there. We just want to be able to pick up the customers that call upon us and provide service. And that's what we take pride in, taking care of the people. And the people call upon us to provide service, and we want to do that. Thank you.
That's all.
That's it? Thank you very much. Councilmember Sanchez, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to move adoption. We did have this discussion. We had a very, very long discussion before, and nothing that has been said has changed my mind. I really want to give high service to our residents. It makes sense to me to have at least 10, with one of them being a handicapped taxi cab. It's a lot easier to regulate that way when you have, when you're not having these onesies and twosies and whatever. So I'm going to move adoption.
Thank you. Do we have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Feline, please.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on a point of clarification. We've decided that the amendment doesn't restrict drop-offs from pickups outside the city of Oceanside.
No, just to be clear, it does. If you have more than 5 within a month, and the speaker is correct on that point. But if you're less than 5, then you're exempt from the requirements to obtain a certificate in accordance with this code section. If you have more than 5 compensated transports within a 30-day period from a point outside the city to a destination within the city, it shall be subject to the terms of Section 35-4, meaning they have to get a certificate and comply with all of the requirements in this code.
Well, that's the 10 cabs and the...
That's correct.
How would you enforce people getting dropped off in the city? I missed the meeting when we finalized this, but do other cities, is that provision typical in city ordinances?
Honorable Mayor, council members, no, it's not typical, and from our research, other issues aren't typical than minimum of 10 and whatnot. We did indicate that we will have some difficulty in enforcing this, but the council direction was clear that they wanted an aggressive enforcement campaign, and so we are meeting with the representative attorney's office, police department, and code enforcement to develop a targeted enforcement campaign to address the drop-offs and pickups that are outside of, once we put the ordinance in effect, which is not going to be for a little bit of time, to address that.
And I guess I will admit taxi cab ordinances aren't my expertise, but if Carlsbad passed a similar ordinance that says you can't drop off in Carlsbad, and we have an ordinance that says you can't drop off in Oceanside, and they each have to tell the companies, I can't drop off, how do you get a cab ride?
Mayor and Council, actually Carlsbad's is essentially deregulated. They don't have the 10 minimum. They allow multiple cab companies, which is what we had originally proposed, but the council decided on a different path. So the way this is written is based on the council's direction during that hearing to have the 10 minimum with one handicap accessible and limit the number of drop-offs on Oceanside.
Okay, yeah, I was not here for the second half of that debate, and so I'm not going to hold it up, but I think I'd ask city staff certainly to monitor this issue and make sure, that we're not creating some kind of unsolvable problem here where people can't get rides.
I trust once we start the active enforcement campaign, you will hear from cab companies.
Is that it? Thank you. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I guess we have 16 through 20.
Correct.
If we can, I'll make it quick, I'm sorry.
Item 16, Mayor Wood.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize. It was a long and interesting meeting at best, but a couple of things, if I may. I gave a plaque out to the First Baptist Church and Pastor Adam Smith on Grace Street for 125th anniversary. They showed us videos, etc., how old this church was in Oceanside and how it progressed through Oceanside. It was a 125-year-old church in Oceanside, so we thank them for that. We also had Tuesday groundbreaking for the Spring Hill Suites. That's the Marriott Hotel in downtown area, the redevelopment. That was kind of an interesting thing. It'll be the start of a new hotel downtown and hopefully progressing for our redevelopment downtown area. Thank you on that. The other one, I did attend a unique ceremony. We had a handwritten Torah for the Jewish community, and it was written the same way it was done 3,300 years ago. And fairly interesting, it's the first one in the area, and I was very proud to be there, along with some other council members. And so for the Jewish community, that was a very important day and process for having the Torah there. So thank you for all the people that have invited us. It's been warm, it's been unique, it's a campaign trail, the silly season as we all call it. So we understand that. I have one last thing. A really good friend of mine, and somebody who gave it, a gentleman by William Curley Bond, B-O-N-D, who lived out in Costa Serena. Good friend, former Marine, former law enforcement officer who was sitting on the Police and Fire Commission, passed away just the other day. Family and friends contacted me. He was a good friend and gave a lot back to the community. He will be missed, and he doesn't want anything from it. So I just wanted to say he had passed away, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Item 17, Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. The First Baptist Church was in the code enforcement building, and that was moved off the Coast Highway.
Sure was.
Or whatever they called it in 1887. But it was great fun looking at the old pictures and seeing all the old people that the old citizens that were here 40, 50, 60 years ago. Just a couple other things. Nathan Williams is the president at El Camino High School, president of the freshman class. My congratulations to him. And Haley Williams turned 10, and she's running for the class president for the 5th grade at Ivy Ranch. And Micah Sega is 5. So my hat's off to all of them. It was fun giving them little ones birthday spanks.
Item 18, Councilmember Feline.
This will be a short one for once. I was privileged, as the mayor mentioned, to attend the Torah celebration by the Chabad Jewish Center, and the mayor and I was actually there when the school was when the first letters were written, And so over the months that have passed, a scholar from Israel who has to write this all by hand has been scribbling away, and then had the ceremony for the final completion. And it's wonderful in a small way participate in an event that's basically been unchanged for 3,000 years. And so I was privileged to be invited and was happy to participate. Of course, we should all celebrate our Constitution Day that took place on the 14th. And I think when we look back on the American Revolution and our Constitution, it's the one time in the world where economic liberty and political liberty expanded when the Revolution was over, and we've been going forward ever since. So happy Constitution Day for everyone. And it was wonderful to participate in the groundbreaking for our new downtown hotel that hopefully will bring many more tourists to downtown Oceanside and create the critical mass to have more restaurants and more businesses going in downtown Oceanside. We're moving ahead, and it was great to actually have the shovel and turn the dirt. Thank you.
Item 19, Councilmember Kern.
Click the button in. There we go. Thank you. I just a couple things. On 9/11, we did attend the memorial walk from the pier up to Fire Station 1. The nice ceremony by the police department. It did commemorate the second deadliest day on American soil, the 9/11 attacks. And consequently, uniquely this last week we celebrated the anniversary of the deadliest day on American soil, which is 150 years ago. And that was the Battle of Sharpsburg, or most people know as the Battle of Antietam, where 3,600 soldiers died in one day and 23,000 casualties. So as time goes on, we tend to forget those things. And even though 9/11 is fresh in our memories, Antietam still hopefully will always hold the record for the deadliest day on American soil. So as a history teacher, I've always tried to impress on my students when I was teaching about the Battle of Antietam. And the real unique thing about the Battle of Antietam, even though both sides claimed victory, it gave President Lincoln the impetus to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. Because of the victory at Antietam, that kind of propelled civil rights throughout the nation. The second thing I did as I attended the pet fair over at the Bark Avenue over off 76 this last Saturday, and a couple hundred people with a couple hundred pets. So it was quite unique. It was a little warm. You could tell the dogs really didn't like walking on the asphalt. They stayed in the shade. So but it was a nice event. Dr. Carton put that on last year. Unfortunately, last year they did it in November and it rained, and so they decided to move it earlier. And then we had the hottest day of the year. So hopefully next year it'll be just right. So anyway, to Dr. Carton. Lastly, if I can get KOCT to focus on the overhead projector for me. So there we go. This is for Friends of the Women's Resource Center. It's the Walk Away from Domestic Violence event. It's a 2-mile sunset stroll along Oceanside Harbor. It is Sunday, October 14th at 4 o'clock. It is a fundraiser. I hope your focus is better than my focus on this. So all proceeds will benefit the children who reside with their mothers at the WRC facilities. The mothers are recovering from domestic violence and or sexual assault through the women's resource programs. Your support allows the Friends of the WRC to brighten their days. So this is actually, the WRC has certain things that they do to support the women. It's the Friends that actually support the rest of the families, the children, and some of the things that the mothers can't handle. So for information, please contact Joanne Bowers. I don't know if you can quite read it there, but the phone number is 760-941-1153. So hopefully everybody can participate in that's able to. It'll be a nice sunset stroll along the harbor, and it'll raise money for a good cause. So thank you.
Item 20, Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. In addition to all of those events, there was another event, and this has become an annual event. It's a celebration of freedom and independence. September 15th is recognized in both North America and South America's very critical day of independence and freedom. And what we have in Oceanside is Noche Mexicana. It is truly a community-based event that has happened, as I said, every year. And this year, we had some outstanding people who came forward to make sure it happened. And I want to first start off by saying that my aide, Christina Sanchez, did so much in making sure it happened. We learned a whole lot about food vendors and licenses and traffic control and all those things that need to happen to make an event successful. George Lopez, phenomenal. He helped us make sure that all the books were done correctly. Maria Russell, Eastside Neighborhood Association Chair, she brought the community forward and together. Monica DeMerck of the Oceanside Public Library put together the events for the kids and really did an outstanding job. She helped us do the flyer and so many other things. Our vendors, our major vendors that have been there for year after year is La Perla Tapatia up here on Mission Avenue, Reggie's and Brian Gaeta. Wonderful, wonderful people, wonderful restaurant. They give so much to the community every year, and this was no exception. Sarah Stella from Azafran, also a partner, did a tremendous job for us. Mrs. Iñiguez, also from Eastside Neighborhood Association, she went out and talked to all the vendors, the food vendors as well as the non-food vendors, and without her, there's no way this could have happened. Luis Oseguera, who does our Ballet Folklorico in Oceanside, he's basically become a professional, and he's gotten so many accolades. He even had a program at El Camino High School at the Truax Center the next day. And our newest partner, the Show Palace. Show Palace has now changed hands. The new owners want to partner with us and do a lot of things for the community, and it's really exciting to see them coming out and doing things with us. And actually, there's one more partner that without them, we wouldn't have been able to pay all the bills, and that's Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo came through for us in a way that was just wonderful. So thank you, Wells Fargo. And that's it. Thank you.
Pablo.
No. Our VIP was Pablo Jimenez, and it was actually in his honor that we had this year's event. And thank you, Mayor, for coming by.
Madam Clerk, is that everything?
That is it.
Thank you. We'll adjourn to a workshop on Wednesday, September the 26th, 2 p.m. here. Other than that, enjoy, be safe.
Oh, one other person, Jesus. Jesus, thank you. Sorry about that.